Yes. Just pulling up. I can see you on a computer here.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
Oh, what are you playing over there? Are you playing something?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm pretending to play.
Oh, no. I know that's some bullshit because I know you can play.
I can play very badly, but I make really good sounds, and I know how to make it sound like I'm doing really good shit, right?
Well, isn't that the definition of knowing how to play?
Listen, I have this conversation all the time with people, and it's about what the definition of a musician is, right? And the definition of a musician is someone who can't imagine not doing something musical, not playing music, not performing. Doesn't matter how good or how bad, it's just you can't imagine not doing that thing. It's the thing that drives you, right? You can't imagine not playing or performing music. So regardless, I spent years, I'm sure like many of us, looking at people whose technical skills were way better than mine and thinking, I want to be, just regretting that I wasn't them or wishing to be them and just missing all the really good stuff, which is, it's okay. Just do what you do. It's fine.
Right. If we're going to bullshit a little bit until my brother gets back, but I fell into that game, and I guess it's what got me into music, right? I wanted to play the bass, and I wanted to be like Stefan S.O.R from the Dave Matthews Band. I was about 18 years old, and maybe 19 years old, and he was playing, get this right here, bub. He was playing music that caught my ear at an early age. Well, for me, 18 was an early age. Most people played when they were like 7, 12 or whatever. But it caught me. The things that he were doing on the bass caught me. I paid attention to it, and I said, I want to play the bass. But I want to play the bass, and I want to sound like him.
Yeah. So
I get the bass. I get everything that I need, this cheap $200 Ibanez bass, and I'm playing, I'm trying to play, but nothing comes out sounding like him. I'm like, I am complete shit, not even taking it easy on myself, not even knowing, Andrew, that Stefan S.O.R was in jazz school by the time he was, 10?
Yep.
Like he put all this work into being a musician.
He did the 10,000 hours, right?
He did the 10,000 hours, and foolish me thought that anybody could just pick it up and just run wild and sound like their hero. So after that big slap in the face, I thought, oh my God, I have to put the hours in. Like, I have to practice. But life creeped up on me, got involved with being a paramedic, got involved with becoming a law enforcement, got involved with shoeing horses. Throughout the course of time, I was still playing it, but I wasn't playing how I should have been playing. And I was always like, I'll never sound like them. But I wasn't keeping myself accountable to be as good as them. Not sound like them, but be as good as them. So ever since, until a few years ago, I finally had the time, the year and a half plus time to dedicate my time to the music that I love to play. I'm 46 years old. Is it too late for me to go out there and be that what I want it to be? Go out, have people listen to me?
No.
Yeah.
We can get into that because that's a whole other area. I love mentoring people that have a passion but feel they're no good. I do a lot of vocal coaching. I do a lot of mentoring people on different instruments. Not that I play, but I know what it means, and I know that the whole thing is about what's up here and how much you practice. And it's also understanding that you can try to do you can certainly try to sound like your heroes, try to play in the style of, but it's better in a way. I mean, and that's no bad thing. but it's better in a way to take on the flavors and the tonality of your heroes and bring that into what you're doing. So, you know, bass is just such an important instrument. It's so important. And there are people out there, when you're listening to some people playing bass, the way Taylor Levine, it's Levin. There's something about the way he hits the bass that just grounds everything.
Right.
And what he plays isn't Stanley Clarke, and it isn't that kind of stuff, but God, he can play, and you can learn his stuff just by understanding where the downbeat, you know, where you need to bed this stuff down, right?
Right.
He's a very clever man.
Right.
But he's not beyond reach, and I think that's for all of us something. Don't be too worried about what technical level.
I'm not now, and now that I've actually had the year and a half to spend time and study my craft, I can't tell you how far I've progressed, and how I've like come along with fretboard memorization, and now I can mimic people when they sing. I can find those notes in the bass, and
there you go.
There you go. And I said, well, you see there, that was just a year's time. If I had kept up with my studies 30 years ago, it'd be a different story. But like we just discussed, it's never too late. I think if you find something you're passionate about, especially your music, I don't give a shit how old you are. Dive in it, deep dive in it, consume yourself in it until you're content. But don't get wrapped up in chasing things that'll never be caught.
Go on.
I think Marcus Miller said that, you know, I'll never chase how far I want to go and how I can be better, because it's going to be an endless pursuit. It's an endless pursuit. You'll never be good enough.
One of the it's funny you should say that. One of the defining moments for any musician is when you start, you know, you start a live something, you start getting booked for a live something, and you go, you know, and if you have the chance, and you really should, to go in and rehearse before you do your first live gig or any of your gigs, you and the band you're with your own chops will just go through the roof, because you don't want to let that, you'll just make sure you know that stuff, right? And then what happens is you get so good at that, the first gig just kind of happens. And if something goes wrong, you laugh about it with the people on stage, if that's what happens. But generally, you just nail it because you've rehearsed and you've practiced. And you kind of work out the bits that you can do well. You know, for a keyboard player, it's how many keyboards do I need and can I play at the same time? Is my left hand strong enough to do that? Or should I do something else there? Should I run a sequence? Should I have an arpeggio? What should I do? Or should someone else? Should we have another, you know, whatever? So just going out and doing it live is a really good thing, and you learn so much so quickly, not least of which you're exposed to working with other people all the time,
right,
who are making demands of you, and you're constantly negotiating where you should be or what you should be doing, which is also a really good discipline. Really good discipline.
Right. Yeah. And you have others to keep you accountable.
Yeah, you do.
Okay, we are at the
5 to 7.
Oh, okay. Okay, we're at 2 o'clock. So let's get this started, shall we?
Yeah.
You do what
All
you
right.
will.
And I am going to do my famous intro.
Oh my God, he thinks he's famous.
Everyone loves it.
Oh.
I had a call from Johnny Carson. He said he loves it.
Oh shit.
Yeah. Oprah's been ringing. Oprah's, Oprah, no love. No.
Not now.
Leave it. Leave it. Hang on. Hello? No, Oprah. No, mate. No. He's busy.
There you
Yeah,
go.
yeah.
Thank you. Welcome back to the podcast. And today we have Andrew Longhurst. And Andrew has come 3,558 miles away to Monkey Island.
I thought I'd be Ed McMahon while you do your Johnny Carson thing.
Yeah. Andrew's come all the way from the UK to land on Monkey Island to attempt to try to tame what cannot be tamed, what Jane Goodall failed at doing, aka Marilyn. It cannot be done. But he wants to have a conversation. And his protagonist is a silverback gorilla, so that we may find foundation in which
In common ground.
we could speak on. Andrew,
Very interesting.
good sir. How are you?
What's it got to do with you?
Oh,
Honestly, you're so nosy. You asked me to come on these things and you're just asking questions already.
already.
I mean, really.
That's a very
Really, guys.
interesting response. That's new, refreshing.
Anyway, I've got to go now. Bye.
All right. Well, there you guys have it. That was Andrew
It was
Longhurst.
a strong it was a strong attempt, people. It was a strong attempt.
I'm good. I'm good, thank you.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, you always look so damn happy when I see you on screen.
Yep.
As long as your camera's not zooming out and zooming in on your prima donna looks and all, I think we're good to go.
What? What happened then?
What happened there?
Oh, see,
What?
now you're doing that shit.
What?
Look at that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Ah.
Yeah, you don't want the detail. No.
Spare us the details,
Yep.
Mr. Longhurst.
Okay, Longhurst.
And how are you? And how are you guys?
We are good. We are good. We are, I think, like most people love this world, trying to navigate above the red line and don't go too far above the blue line into poshism, if that's even a word. Just staying real. Just staying real humans trying to get a real life experience. Or shall I say real monkeys trying to get a real life
monkey experience.
real monkey experience.
So do you know why I chose the silverback?
Why did you choose the silverback?
I'm glad you asked that. I didn't think you would.
Oh.
So, the silverback is an interesting animal. Generally, I mean, they tend to be leaders of packs and all that. That's not why I chose him. I chose him because I am silver, as it were, and they are incredibly patient up until a point, and then they go little bursts of energy, and then they're back down again. So they're just a really good. They're a really good symbol for Monkey Island to have. They're a good. They're a good species to have on the island with you, with everyone else.
They are.
Yeah.
You and Doommonger seem to relate well to the silverback, and
Did he choose silverback as well?
yeah. Well, I mean, I think he even changed his moniker picture to a
Yeah, he
silverback
has a
gorilla.
gorilla on
I
it.
don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong, dude.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now in chat.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Andrew, tell us.
Yeah.
Tell us about young Andrew. I think you know the tell of the tape here. How did you grow up? What was life like for you? What was the music being played in the household? Who was mom and dad? And what gave you all of your ideations? Let's go in on this.
Well, my mother and father, they met just towards the end of the war. My father was in the RAF as ground crew, not as flying crew. And he was based very close to where we live now. We were actually brought up in London, which is 100 miles sort of east of here. But they were stationed very close to each other, and they met. I think it was in 1945 or 46, something like that. At a dance. My mother was the secretary to one of the senior sort of Southern Command, one of the sort of military bobs that ran Southern Command, all of the south of England and all of the military installation things there. She was his secretary, and they used to have dances at different bases. And my father went to one, met my mum. His name was Thomas Charles Henry Longhurst, but he's Welsh, and he came from a very deprived background. I didn't realise until much later on, a really deprived background.
Right.
And he'd, at the age of, I don't know, I think it was 15, 16, he lived in a place called Swansea, which is a port town. And he jumped ship, done a stowaway thing, and ran away to Canada when he was 15 or so. And he spent 3 months over there before they caught him.
Oh, wow.
And then stuck him on the next ship back. And after that, he felt that he was much more interesting being called Eddie and having a sort of weird American Canadian accent.
Oh,
and
really?
so he called himself Eddie. I mentioned that because that will have resonance later on, as it were. But yeah, he called himself Eddie. And my mum, I don't know why he was a very good looking young man, and he was very fit. He was playing football and rugby at the time for the army, and for the RAF, and then for his hometown, for Swansea City, and then for some other football clubs, West Bromwich Albion and a couple of others. So he was fit, and he was slender and well built and chiselled, ugly as sin, but actually quite charming and handsome in a way, because of it, in a way that some blokes are. And my mother had been brought up not exactly genteelly, but she was the daughter of a shop owner in a place called Eastbourne, a seaside town. And when the war started, she was can't remember if she volunteered or was enlisted, but she joined up in the WAAF, Women's Auxiliary Air Force, but she was doing all sorts of things, predominantly administrative. She became a sergeant or a sergeant major in that. And so they met through these military things, through this stuff, my father having been through the war, which was, it turns out, not a good experience. And they met, and for whatever reason, they fell in love. And in 1947, they got married.
How old were they when they got married?
Oh, God. They would have been, my mother would have been 28, and my father would have been 24, 25.
Oh, wow. So your mother's older.
Yeah. My mother was older.
And are they both still with us?
No, they've both, they had good long lives.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, they got married in their late to mid 20s, as I think a lot of people did, just after the war. That was, a 5-6 year, 7 year hiatus, wasn't it?
Right.
And they had that in common. So they got together, they got married, didn't have an awful lot of anything. I think they spent a while thinking about learning to be farmers. And then my father got interviewed by the Metropolitan Police, who said, look, you're a big strapping lad, you've got military service, why don't you come and join us? So he did, as a result of which they got police housing. The police had housing estates that they built. So they got housing, and then they started turning us out at a bit of a rate. My mum and dad's first child, Judith, was born with spina bifida, and she died after 2 or 3 days.
Oh, wow.
But then everyone else, again, something which is funny, you get older, you wish you'd had these conversations more openly with your parents when you were able to. But, you don't know these things, you only learn this stuff later.
Right.
But then there were 5 of us, and I was the second youngest. So I was born in sort of the late 50s. And we just had the most ridiculously brilliant, impoverished but brilliant time growing up. We had pets everywhere. There was no room to move. We used to have parties like they were going out of fashion. Every weekend we had parties, and there were cars and bikes everywhere, and we had people turning up from the US Navy, from Canadian Navy. We had all sorts of weird people turning up, as well as policemen in police cars.
Oh, wow. Well,
I hope they were off duty in their police car.
Yes, they were.
yeah, sure. Wink, wink.
Yeah. So that was all kind of interesting. And my mother was an extraordinary woman. She was really well read. My father was literate enough to be able to write and do a police report. Even till the end of his life, he hankered to write plays and books. And I can say this with my hand on my heart, he was terrible.
Oh, wow.
But he was my father, so we used to rip the piss out of him terribly, but which was awful. But he was terrible. He wrote everything like it was a traffic accident report. Someone falling in love will be something like, she looked deep into his eyes, which were flickering from the trafficator on the right hand off left side, flickering at a rate of
Over detail.
Yeah.
all the detail and all very so. But he was when he retired some 28 years later, he was the most decorated officer in the Met.
Oh, damn.
He was a very troubled man. He had a couple of breakdowns because of what happened in the war. But then there was my mother, who had been brought up sort of genteelly. She was really well read, and she used to encourage us all to read. We used to have 2 or 3 newspapers every day, and I can remember from sort of 4 or 5 years old being encouraged to just choose one and read something. And so we became generally really very well read. And then always in the background, she used to work a lot. So my dad was a policeman. She didn't have a full-time job other than looking after 5 people and a policeman who was on duty. So she used to go out and do domestic work, cleaning for people, and whatever else. She'd occasionally work in pubs. She'd fill and stuff envelopes. It was back in the days when people did that kind of stuff. She'd get a load of letters. She'd have to type them, fold them, fill them, seal the envelope, and she got paid a pittance for every 1,000 she did. And she was a fast typist, but God, I just remember her falling asleep at the typewriter some nights, and I was going, what, and she and he both loved music. My father had a pretty good voice, but he thought it was better than it was.
Oh, see, I'm getting this common thing with your father. He's a writer, but to Andrew, he's not the best of writers. He's a singer, but to Andrew,
He's not the best of singers.
No. So here's the thing. What I learnt since he's died, what I've remembered is I know he actually had a good voice, and rather than, I was still reacting to him when I was in my 50s and he was dying, when that was going on, I was still reacting to him like I was an 8-year-old, or 5 or an 8-year-old, because that's sometimes how we, that's the relationship we sometimes have with our parents. I couldn't, I was still battling and rebelling, right? I mean, it did change towards the end, a whole other thing. But he could sing. It's just he sang in a very, a pretty awful club kind of style. Hear the fall, hear the fall.
Yeah.
The sort of, and he didn't need to be drunk to do it.
Right.
But he actually had a beautiful voice, but no one had ever coached him or pushed him to do something, and he'd never had the opportunity to do it in a way where he could see what happened next.
Yeah.
And the one thing I regret is not giving him that opportunity, because I could have, and it didn't occur to me. And I yeah.
What
But
do you
anyway,
mean? Wait, no, hold on, Andrew. Wait a minute.
what?
What do you mean you could have given him that opportunity, but you didn't? So you're saying at a later time in life, when your father still had a perceivable, like, a voice, you could have given him something to maximize, or to at least acknowledge his true potential?
I guess. I mean, I had recording studios. You know, I had numbers of recording studios, and I had access. I had so much kit, and I was producing people and engineering, and I was in with, you know, the great and the good, and doing all sorts of wonderful stuff. It would have been inconsequential in terms of the time it would have taken me to get him in and do something wonderful, do an arrangement around something and give him some tuition, even if it was just so that he had something he could hear with his voice on. That would have been wonderful, because he was more than capable of doing it. But I just didn't think about it. You know, it didn't occur to me.
Right.
Because my 8-year-old self was still busy being embarrassed at my father standing up to sing when we were on holiday in front of people, and just coming across really corny, and all of us children going, oh, yeah, you know, doing the cringe thing like you do sometimes.
Do you still hold on to like some of that, like that coulda, woulda, shoulda? Does it still eat away at you in a sense?
No.
Okay, good.
You kind of have to, you either have to let go of that stuff I mean, it did, but you have to let go of that stuff at some point, because you can't change it, and all you can do is say, I let him down, so I'm going to do something to encourage others to do it. So I may have let him down, but I'm going to turn that into something. So that's kind of what I do.
Right.
So going back to my mum, she used to, whilst she was doing all the bazillion things she used to do, you know, as well as, you know, getting us ready for school and dressing us, and, you know, trying to work out how to get the money together to do all of those things and feed us and cook. She did all these, you know, homemade jams and pies and cakes and all sorts. She used to put on, all the time, she used to put on music, and it would be things like show tunes, you know, long playing records of The Sound of Music, South Pacific, all of those kinds of big stage shows which became films, but also classical music, lots of classical music. So I was brought up on a diet of Prokofiev, Mendelssohn, Tchaikovsky. You're listening to things like Peter and the Wolf, Swan Lake, Beethoven's Fifth, Beethoven's Sixth, the Pastoral. And the thing was, she would explain, she'd tell the story, whilst these things were playing, she would tell the story of each of these characters that was being evoked, because there was no words, it wasn't lyric stuff, most of it. And she'd tell the story of what was going on, which instrument was Peter, which was the wolf, what they looked like.
Passionate about it.
Oh yeah.
Oh God, yeah, she really was, and that sort of lit a fire in me, and also it instilled knowledge in me that I didn't know I had until much later on, about arrangement and tonality and textures, etc. So she really lit the fire in me, but I didn't learn a musical instrument. We had a piano that one day, you know, it was getting more and more out of tune. One day it was stuck outside, and then 2 years later we're breaking it up and setting fire to it.
Wow.
Yeah, that was really daft, but you know, that's what people did in those days. That's what people did. You know, the television happened, and people started getting rid of things like musical instruments because they didn't use them as much, because they're busy watching
The
the
TV.
Right.
So so it didn't occur to me for ages afterwards, but it did influence what I was listening to. And my brothers, you know, my big brother Bob, and one of my older sisters and her boyfriend Pete, when I was 10, 11, 12, they were listening to things like, well, obviously there was the Beatles and Rolling Stones. My brother loved the Rolling Stones and Mick Jagger. Then there was Jimi Hendrix, Electric Ladyland, and there was Stray, a band called Stray, Free, you know, Wishing Well, Free, Led Zeppelin, all of those kinds of things. And my brother-in-law, as he then became Peter, he was my sister's husband, he used to go to all these pubs to see bands, quite not massive pubs and not huge venues, But he used to go and he used to take me and sort of smuggle me under his coat because I was only 12. And so we'd go into a pub where everyone's drinking and this stuff, going to see bands, and he'd have me under his big coat, right? And I'd walk along 4 feet.
Yeah,
and
you don't see the extra feet going on down there.
Yeah. I don't know how we did it. I think he knew people and they just, he made a thing of it. But I saw all these bands before they became big. I saw Deep Purple, I saw Led Zeppelin, I saw Camel. I mean, just so many big bands going through. And it was quite extraordinary. It was absolutely Average White Band, quite extraordinary. So I got to see all of these bands, and when I'm seeing them, I'm hearing a lot of the chordal stuff. I didn't know, what it was because I hadn't been trained. Right. But I'm hearing all this chordal stuff going on in, with different bands and going, hey, that sounds a bit like, so, the Smoke on the Water, or one of them, it sounded a bit like Chopin's second piano concerto in C minor. There was there's all of that going on. Mm-hmm. So I started hearing this and I was just intrigued and I really, really wanted to do it. And then I heard the synthesizer and I went,
Yeah.
So yeah, that was, and just before I got the synthesizer, I was a deeply windswept and interesting young man, boy, going to friends' parties where I'd sit down in a chair, very, very drunk, and do Rick Wakeman solos, thinking that was going to get me laid.
Oh, no.
Of course not. Everyone thought I was a complete and utter wank puffin, which indeed I was.
Right.
But clearly I had a hankering, and I'd not had any tuition or whatever. And that whole early start to stuff and being exposed. I was also listening to, my brother was also listening to people like Otis Redding, Sam and Dave, and of course we had all the the so-called rock and roll stuff. So
what
Jerry
was being
Lee
played with the parties with the military and the police? Surely your mom wasn't playing classical music.
No. The parties, the classical music. I felt very special. Okay. In that my mother and I, we were a large family, but my mother and I, she shared that with me specifically.
Oh, I got you. Okay.
It was a thing we had. Do you know, I've never asked my other brothers and sisters if they did the same thing, but it was a thing we shared. It was a bit like the newspaper. There were various columns, satirical columns in newspapers then that, they were sharp and they got you thinking. And we always used to share those. We neither of us would read it until the other one was there, and then we'd read them together and howl with laughter. Mm-hmm. So that was something she shared. The parties, that was whatever was going on. I remember, Superstition. That's something.
Okay. So it was live. The parties were live. You had some Motown going on.
We had Motown. Motown. Big time Motown, lots and lots of Motown. We had everything, rock. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of bluesy stuff, but mostly stuff that you could dance to. Because guess what? People get drunk; they want to dance. Even my brother, one of my brothers, who did the Mick Jagger sort of walk,
right?
Which was, I'm sure, deeply embarrassing. But I idolized him, and I thought he was the coolest dude in the world because he could do that, the walk thing. As you do, you sort of idolize people, and then you find out later on, stuff. But so we had a very rich childhood, very rich. But so I learned a lot.
So do you mean that figuratively, rich, or like
the quality of life?
The quality of
just life. I remember when I was 16. I got a job early. I left school early. There was a point at which I wanted to just I was very inquisitive and exploring and questing, and I wanted to go to uni. And it was made very clear to me at about 14 years old, because you have to start working towards your a university place between 16 and 18 at school. So you go to something called the sixth form to do that. And it was made clear to me at 14 that wasn't going to happen. At 13, that wasn't going to happen because they couldn't afford it. So I essentially bunked off. I cut school and did almost anything except that. I wasn't off robbing people or doing whatever, but I was reading, I was learning stuff. I went out shooting with a gamekeeper at a big park place they had near us. So I went out and learned to shoot, and all sorts of stuff, just a really eclectic and whatever. But I knew I wasn't going. I knew I wasn't going to uni. So yeah, that was that.
So you figured out you weren't going to like a university, correct?
Yeah.
And then so at some point, Andrew tells himself, I am going to get myself into music. When did that pivotal moment strike?
It never did.
Whoa.
Yeah. It's odd. So our life journeys,
Right.
No, it didn't happen like that. I was just doing all sorts of bits of work for, I was doing almost, I didn't know what I wanted, right, is the truth. And a lot of my friends were musicians, but I couldn't play. But I kind of started experiencing vicariously synthesis and musicianship and knew I couldn't play like that.
What age are you when you're having this conundrum?
Between 13 and 17.
Okay.
And I mean, and pretty much all the way through that. And then, so I'd left school early to get a job. And my first job lasted a year because I was terrible at it.
What was it? Come on, spare no details, old chum.
I was a male prostitute. No, I wasn't. I was what? I couldn't afford the refunds. So no, I worked for what was then called Post Office Telecommunications, which got spun off to become British Telecom. So I was taken on as a trainee engineer, working in telephone exchanges and out on the road down holes, doing cabling and putting phones into people's houses. And the only thing you could do wrong in that job was to be late, 1 minute late, and it was a crime of crimes. You could turn up on time, not do a stroke all day, or do one, instead of doing 5 jobs a day, just do 2, and then sort of find your way back, find a cafe to sit in. And it was a really odd thing. And there were some really good guys in there, but everyone was sort of not the most diligent, shall we say. And after a year, I got called in, and they said, I'm sorry, we're going to have to let you go. And I said, is it the timekeeping? They said, yeah, it's the timekeeping, but also you told us you passed some exams, which you didn't.
Oh.
And I said, that, right, well, here's the thing.
Oh, shit.
Come to bite you in the ass, did it?
Oh, yeah, big time. I mean, the thing was, when I applied for the job, I was going to take the exams. I was, and I was looking like it was going to be straight A's, B's. I was going to do all right with all of them. But I just couldn't be asked to turn up. Or if I did, I'd fill in comedy answers to everything, because I really, really, really couldn't be asked with it. I just didn't see the point of it, and because I knew I wasn't going to university. So I walked out of my exams. And the school rang my parents, and everyone got together and said, look, we can get him back in, he can do this. And my mother said, yes, you've got to. And my father said, yes, you've got to. And I said, but you're not letting me go to university. Why? I already know this shit. I'm already reading. I'm reading rapaciously. I read every day. I read everything.
Right.
And I just said, why? And they didn't really have an answer. So I landed this job on the basis that I was taking my exams and I was going to pass. And a year later, they realised they hadn't had those exam results. And when they looked, there weren't any.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
So I was kind of caught out. I was caught out, not the first time. And I went on to do a series of things, working in factories, I ended up working night shift in a lighting factory, making fluorescent tubes.
Mm-hmm.
And that was brilliant. For about 9 months, it was brilliant. You got paid an awful lot more. And it was a really odd collection of predominantly men who got together and created these fluorescent tubes. The night shift was always a really odd one, but and it was very clannish, and I kind of discovered brothers, as it were, at that time. They were my clan, which was kind of cool.
Yeah.
And then after that, I was kind of scratching around, and someone offered me a job. Someone said, "Look, I know someone. Go and get a job at this place called Standard Telephone and Cables," which was a company that made equipment and wiring and all sorts of other stuff for British Telecom. Mm-hmm. And so I got a job there as a technical assistant doing drawings, because I was a really good technical artist. And I got a job there. And on the back of that, I discovered the first computers, a little Hewlett-Packard with a long LCD screen, or LED screen. And I wanted to know how to create a picture of a train and make it chuff along. So I started learning to code that. I didn't learn much, but I started learning that. Mm-hmm. So I started sort of thinking about computing. And then I saw a synthesizer for sale as a kit in a magazine called, I think it was Electronic Musician. It was the Transcendent 2000. And it cost £199.99. And I think I went to the bank and borrowed the money. Don't know why they gave me the money because I had this job working for STC. And I got this thing and I built my first synthesizer, and then I took it to someone else at STC and said, "Now can you build it properly?" Because I wasn't the best solderer. And that's, despite all of this stuff, I wasn't great.
Right.
And then I had my first sexual experience with a goose, as Kent has asked. No,
God damn it, Kent.
yeah,
Wait
so
your turn.
that was kind of interesting. I got that, and when it was built, I just had it up. I was living at home still with my parents, and I had my own bedroom, and I just set it up on a rickety something, and I started playing that through a really cheap hi-fi that I bought. It wasn't a hi-fi, it was a real lo-fi, but it claimed to be all sorts of things. And I suddenly found synthesizers, and I suddenly found this thing, and I realized I could do a lot more with a monophonic synthesizer. I could appear a lot better than with a keyboard where I needed to play polyphonically.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So I'm kind of, this is good. And let's try and emulate some of those sounds I know. And that's kind of how that jumped me into music. And I started thinking, like, what about some effects pedals? And so someone gave me or lent me a phaser, and someone else a delay, a Bucket Brigade delay. Mm-hmm. And I'm doing these sequences, playing them manually, and getting the delay, doing the triplets thing. So I end up with all this bouncy stuff going on, and I'm thinking, that's pretty weird and wonderful. And I thought, well, I need to know more. So I just happened to know someone that knew someone that owned a musical instrument hire company.
Right.
And I rang them up one day and said, how much would it cost for me to hire a Mini Moog? And I can't remember what it was, but it was about a week's wages to hire it for a couple of days. And I said, well, how long for 4 days? They said, well, if you have it 4 days, you can have it for a week, and we'll give you a deal on it. So I hired it for a week, and that was the start of something brilliant, because every month I would hire the next something. So I hired in an ARP Odyssey, then a Polymoog, then a CS80, ARP 2600, and I'd have these brilliant synths in my bedroom delivered to me for a week or two at a time, and I learnt synthesis, which was just brilliant.
So you did everything self-taught. I mean, have you had any syllabus to look after, or was it just turn knobs and push buttons?
Turn knobs, push buttons. The thing about being young is you have a very flexible plastic mind.
Right.
So you learn really quickly, and you start seeing conceptually what's going on. Things like the Transcendent was a really good one to start with, and the Moog, Mini Moog, even the Polymoog, which is a bit weird, and the Odyssey. All of those sort of ramped it up a bit more, giving more and more features and getting more and more exotic. So you'd learn from one, you do the left to right flow, and then you go to the next one and you start finding out a bit more about modulation and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So it's all self-taught, self-learned. Yeah.
Same here. I can relate to you. A lot of it I didn't want to be taught. I wanted to have that Lewis and Clark expedition into the U.S. I wanted to go and figure it out for myself and have that sense of exploratory. But yet, I would ask certain people, what does this mean when I do this? And because some things were just beyond my knowledge,
Yeah, you don't know what you don't know, right?
Right.
I did the same thing, but as well as the rest of us back in the day, I used to get a thing called Bass Player Magazine, and they would have like the feel or the lick of the week, and they would put the tab in there right along with the, you know what I mean? So I could read it, and YouTube wasn't really a big thing, so you had to go and get like scale charts. There was this one scale book. I still have it. I'm amazed I still have it. It's 20 years old, and it's called The Bass Grimoire. And it has,
yeah.
You remember this? It has every scale imaginable.
Yeah.
But I've since upgraded. I don't know if you guys know a person called Yannick Guazdala, but he's a great bassist, and he has this book right here. It's the bassist book of scales and arpeggios, methods and exercise for electric bass. And I'm telling you, it covers everything from bebop to the Hungarian to the Ukrainian scale in all kind of Mezzanine scale. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but it's more work, and it's more readily available now in the book than I would have ever thought imaginable. Like, I'm never going to clear this book.
The funny thing is that I've come to education and music almost from the other side, which is I'm teaching people now about synthesis and sound, certainly production and engineering. That I know. The technical side I really know well. I really, really know well. Musically, I've through the communities that we're all sort of involved with here, I've discovered people. There's a wonderful guy called David Bessel who sits on the PSN chat often. He has his own thing. He does all sorts of concerts and writes music for TV, film, and or he's got a long-term collaboration and thing going on with a guy called Ian Boddy, who's also a synthesist. But what David does is he also plays guitar, and he's learnt music theory. He's done the whole, going to music college and all that stuff. And we were just talking, and one day he just happened to post. He said, look, if anyone's interested, I can give you a 1 hour lesson in this theory, a particular theory, for 30 quid. And I just thought, you know what? I've never had one of those. So I just rang him up and said, let's do it. And so we did. And ever since then, which is only about 2-3 years ago, I've been fascinated by the whole area of, I'm doing this whole thing with circular fifths at the moment. And it's proving so rich for making music. It's ridiculous.
Right.
And I've been aware of it for years, but I've never done it. And people like that have just sort of jumped in, and done something useful where they've said, right, you've got your keyboard on in front of you, yeah, right, play this, and you're kind of like, what, play this, and so you do, and you go, oh right, I see what you mean,
Right.
that little thing, and it's brilliant. It's brilliant to finally start connecting those dots, as it were.
I've done that recently, and it's brand new to me. It's always, another bassist developed his own pattern. He called it sequential sixth. And I've given this information to Steve Sonos, and there were some notes. I think he was fascinated by oh my gosh, Steve's gonna help me out. I wanna say it was the thirds I was playing, or the sixth, I don't know. But it was the way you play the scale. You can play the normal Ionian scale, or you can play it in a manner of which you can add things together and create the scale entirely a brand new fashion, giving it much more melodic outlook. And then it connects the dots that, oh my God, I'm playing all these different variations of these notes now in a simple Ionian scale, which I've never known to have done.
Right.
And it sounds brilliant.
And do you know the funny thing about that, the really cool thing about that is talented musicians, and you are one, by the way, Lamar, you're very talented.
Shit. Thank you, sir.
No, seriously, you are. And what happens is, if you're self-taught, you will play around with things and you'll come up with some nice sounding whatevers, melodies or riffs or chords or whatever. You know, I do that all the time. But you kind of have difficulty understanding why they work, and maybe even remembering what they are, and, you know, all that kind of stuff, because you don't have the language to tie them to. So when someone like David, and in your case, your the thing you've passed on to Steve, once someone starts giving you some of the language to go with it, it's odd, because I think a lot of us steer away from people that do the language thing, you know, kind of the Mixolydian blah 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 blah, and you go, what? Just show me. Oh, that, right, now I know what you mean.
Right.
But actually, if you know what it is, and you can start playing with that, and actually having the discipline to just play around with those terms and see what they mean and where they take you, suddenly the next time you have an idea, you've got a structure that, you know, you've suddenly learned a structure, a lingual structure that you can put a label on, and you'll remember it. And suddenly all these things that previously were random findings, you suddenly go, oh wow, now I get it.
Yeah.
Now I get it.
I would do that. I would stumble upon things, you know, and I do the modes. I do them in C, and it goes to D Dorian, to Phrygian, Mixolydian. You know, I can name them all of the modes, but forever I would play a C major, and I'll be playing that, and I would fold myself into an A minor. And I was going, well, why does the major and this minor sound like it go hand in hand? When I found out, this is a ways back, that the relatives, right? C major, A minor, they're relative. And because of the A, you're hitting, when you play an A minor, you're hitting the root, which is A, and that, what gives it that minor is the C chord, right? You go from A to C, and it makes it an A minor. Well, if you're already playing in C major, you're playing in A minor, and it's just this whole thing about thirds being like, you're just replacing the thirds, you know, the major third to the minor third. And I think when I found that out, I was like, there's no more guessing game between this. Now I have some sort of connectivity on majors and minors, and how
a framework.
And I would have never have gotten that if I had not been on YouTube looking at people play, and then they explain it to you in a way where you can comprehend it. And I think with teaching, that's one of the things that turns off most students is, I just want to play the bass. I don't want to know what sequential sixths are, or diminished seventh, and like, how does that got to do anything with me jamming? And the way you're teaching me, it just sounds like a foreign language.
Yeah, and it is exactly that. There's that thing. You go, I don't care what it's called. I know what it sounds like, and I want to sound like that. How do I do it? Don't give me the no. You have to understand these things really. But you can go the long way. Yeah, go the long way. That's fine. You carry on.
Right.
And then when you get round to learning some of that stuff, you go, man, that's what it is.
Yeah, because you fall in this rut, right? Like I found myself in a pentatonic rut.
I have another question that someone wants me to ask, but before I do, Wagyu is exactly right.
Wagyu.
When I bought the Hydrosynth, I was only I think a year into synthesis. I don't know much about synthesis, to be honest. And I have a book that helps me with the terminology, but the way I learn is exactly what Wagyu is saying. I just go to an init form, and the Hydrosynth has a great pathway, and then it has great outliers. And if you follow the pathway, it's a very basic form of creating a nice patch, as long as you're picking your waveforms to taste. But it also has great outliers to take you away from certain things to make your sound a little bit more distinct. And those are the things that get beyond me. But what I do is exactly like Wagyu said. I just turn the knob slightly, macro turns and sometimes micro turns, and just see how the sound changes, and take mental note that, oh, okay, the resonance does this to your cutoff. Oh, okay, so your filter can be tied to this and this. And once you just go back and forth and delete it and go back in, create another init, and start to see what these things are actually doing to your sounds, in my mind, I just remember them. Now, I don't know what they're called. I don't know, how they should be used or what they should be tied to. I just know my ear doesn't lie. And it gives me a form of exploring a dark cave. You're proverbial spelunking through this machine, and you're just finding things. You're just finding things, and it's every time you do, you're amazed, and I don't want to lose that. But there are certain things my brother plays on the bass where I have to go, okay, now I have to get in here and figure out what this scale is doing. Not that I want to fully learn the scale, but I need to know the keys he's in, so I can then go my way and approach it where it's still interesting and no one's handing me the cheat code, for a lack of better words. Okay.
That's really interesting, because one of the things that I do when I do quite a lot of mentoring and for people in the creative arts. So I've got the video studios, and I do a lot of stuff with VR as well, but I also do audio, and I've done a lot of music and music design and all sorts of different things. And for all of the creative arts, when someone comes in, I tend to give them an analog synth that has a very simple VCO, VCF, VCA structure, right? And once they learn that, preferably 2 or more oscillators, because then they can hear the effect of chorusing, etc. And with that, just that very simple workflow, like from a Mini Moog or a whatever is your choice,
right?
Even the Poly D, anything. Once you learn that, you learn essentially everything you need to know about the technology that underpins music and video and editing, because the envelopes, they are like compressors and or like EQ. The filter's EQ, but in a much more dynamic way. But essentially, you're learning about brightness and darkness and textures and all of those things. Once someone's learnt that, once someone's just played around with it for with a young person, it's a day or two, and they get it fundamentally. And if you give them another, a week later, you give them another go on it, or you send them away with one, they come back, they've mastered that, they understand what's going on, and you can show them anything after that.
Right. I'm a late bloomer.
That's a great thing to be, though.
Right.
So here's another thing, right? My wife, who is just the love of my life. She's the right height, as I say, and everyone else is a frigging giant. She's the right height, and she's very slender, and she's utterly gorgeous. And we've been together for 25 years or so. And I've been doing music and, taking her to things every once in a while. And she's always really blown away by the people that I know, and that's just kind of, whatever. They're just people I know, right? They're mates. And I think about a year and a half, 2 years, Christmas before last, we were watching a program about music and about someone being taught to sing. I think it was operatic singing, in actual fact. But we were just watching it because it's one of those things where you see people go on a journey, which is a great thing. I like those. And we're just sitting there snoogling up, and she goes, "Oh, you know what?" I said, "Well," she said, "Oh, I'd really like to learn to sing. I wish I could go learn to sing." And I said, "Well, I'll teach you." She said, "What?" I said, "Well, why didn't you ask me? We've been together 20-something. Why didn't she go?" "Well, I didn't think that you would want to because you're professional. And, you do." And I was like, did I look at that? I've done it. Did I make it seem like that? And clearly she was too intimidated to have asked, and thought she would never be good enough. So we started straight away. And this isn't for her to become a pop star, which is another theme of mine. Do music because you can't not to make fame and riches. That may come as well, but that's not why you do it, right? So we started straight away, and very quickly I discovered she's got a good 4 to 4.5 octaves. That's a lot for a singer. Right. That's really, she
range. Right.
Oh, huge range. And she's learning to perform, and it's something which, we work on every once in a while, and, take steps forward. I'm really hoping to get her to perform somewhere, because again, you learn a lot from performing. But she didn't think she would ever do that. She started when, I know she won't mind me saying this, when she was in her late 20s, 61. She started really late, and said, like, I'll never be able to learn because, I said, no. Thing is, you've not used your voice in that way, so you've got all this musculature there, which you've not knackered. So I think we can build it up. And she's getting stronger, holding these notes. She's really, she's got a good voice. Yeah. So blooming late, as you say, Lamar, it's something which is a really good thing to do. And there is no limit to what you can do other than the time you can spend doing it and the fun you have doing it.
Yeah, and it is fun. I have a question for you. Is there a machine right now you want to learn and just go in from scratch without reading the fucking manual?
That's a great question.
Instrument, machine.
There is one. There is one, which is the C15.
Okay, which is?
It's Manny, Dr. Synth, Manny Fernandez will tell you. It's, who's it made by? The guy that owns Native Instruments has made this keyboard. It's wooden cheeked, and it's a beautiful thing. And it's just one of those bonkers machines, which is 2-operator FM, which doesn't sound like a lot. Non-linear labs. Thank you, Manny. Manny's in the chat. There we go.
Hey, Manny.
Thanks, Manny.
Yeah, the non-linear labs C15. That's one of those instruments that just fascinates me. It appeals enough to my sense of logic and exploration to, I love the DXs. I love the DX5. Didn't particularly like the DX7, although it was all right. But I loved the DX5 and being, learning to program that and making it sound analog, because they do. You can make them sound really analog. And this struck me as being one of those instruments which I've looked at and gone, oh, you know what? Oh, I really want one of those. Just because it's hardware and I can get hands-on with it and see what's going on. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be my choice.
What are you doing now for income? Like, what's your main profession you rely on? Is it teaching?
No. Although, I mean, that's something which, seriously, forget the income bit. That's something which I really want to expand, and I want to do a lot more of. I'm looking at turning my studios into an accessible space where people who otherwise wouldn't be able to afford the kind of facilities we have, the green screen stuff, the really high-end cameras, the proper voice booths and sound, and the synths, and the microphones and all that, your cameras, lighting. I want to be able to make that accessible to people who otherwise wouldn't have a chance to. Young people from backgrounds where they wouldn't be able to afford this, perhaps. I really want to encourage women coming into our industries, because they're really badly underrepresented, particularly in the video sector.
Yeah.
So I want to do that, and I want to make it so that it's, if I could, I'd try and do it so that it was, I started exploring it. So I wanted to do it originally so that it was entirely free at the point of delivery, so people could just turn up and learn. But I have learnt from speaking to lots of people that if you make it entirely free, people don't turn up. They kind of book it and they don't value it. Whereas if they're paying something, whether it's £10 an hour or whatever,
they're getting something from it. Right.
Yeah, they'll value it, and they'll give it the value. So I'd love to do that. But right now, I make my money from, I've got my own business doing videos, so I do video production, VR stuff, narration, audio, occasional bits of music, but primarily video and audio.
What were some of we kind of skipped past your 20s, and 30s, like what were some of the jobs you maintained during that year, that age?
So I was working in a number of different jobs. I didn't really hold down jobs well. I got bored really quickly. So, and the thing was, back in those days, if you walked out of one job, you'd have another one, in the morning, you'd have another one in the afternoon, right? Jobs were everywhere. So if you weren't picky, you'd just go and do them. So I worked in record shops, I worked in pubs, all over the place, did all sorts of things, worked in all sorts of different areas. And then I got a job with a mate, someone which I knew through my friends. He had something called an industrial third-party debt collection agency. And what that was he'd take on clients who had other businesses that owed them money, and we'd find a way to ring them up and tackle them and say, you've got to pay this, and start, if they didn't, then we'd take them to court on their behalf, and we'd get a percentage of everything we collected if people had late debts. And it wasn't something I wanted to do, and it was just another job, right? But it was good because I played a role. I played the role of a sort of office person right in the heart of the city of London, and we did that for a little while, and then he started up this whole thing where it was called company searches. So if you want to do any kind of legal something with a company, whether you want a loan or to take out a mortgage or to draw up a contract with a company or buy another company or whatever, then you have to get a solicitor at the time. Even now, you have to get a solicitor or someone to look up the records of that business, check who the owners are, the shareholdings, what their turnover is, all that kind of stuff, what their annual returns are. And it just so happened my father, curiously, knew someone at one of the only two places in England, it's the only place in England where you could actually make those searches, which was called Companies House, which was just around the corner from this office. And so he made an introduction. I went and saw the guy that ran it, who was another working class bloke, same age as my father. And it turned out that you could only do it in London or Cardiff, or I think it was Glasgow or Edinburgh. And so businesses all over the country would ring up a solicitor's office who would send someone along. They'd do a microfiche search, they'd get the details out, and then they'd examine them on a microfiche reader and type this stuff up or make a photocopy and then send it off. Now that would cost a minimum of £15, back then, a minimum of £15 just for basic information, which is title of the company, the directors, shareholding, that kind of stuff, and articles of association. And it would take anything up to 2 weeks. So we realised we're just around the corner from this place, and actually the cost of the search itself at Company's House was 10p. So, and no, I wasn't a heavy, we just used to ring people up and be very nice. I learned to be very nice to people with that job.
Right.
Because if you shout at people, they don't pay you, right?
Right.
And whereas if you're nice and say, look, I understand, but you got to see it from my client's point of view. And we did really well from that. But this thing we did enormously well from, because the guy that I worked for, Graham, had a freaking brilliant business mind, much better than mine. And he invested a load of money in hiring an actor. And he went through something that was then called the Yellow Pages. I think you had them in the States as well. Telephone directories, business directories, with every business and every telephone number for that business in each area. And he'd go and get Yellow Pages, and he would do a mail out to every single solicitor's office, to the office manager of every single solicitor's office in that particular area. And then he'd follow it up in 10 days' time with a phone call from an actor called something John Pryor. Hello, my name's John Pryor. I'd like to speak to the office manager, please. Sounded terribly. He was amazingly, terribly. And he'd just ring these people up and say, look, it's taking you 2 weeks and it's costing you 15 quid. How about we turn it around to you within 48 hours and we'll only charge you 4 quid. And if you want all the details, we'll charge you 15 quid, for which the solicitors would charge, I don't know, 100 quid or something. So we did this. We mailed people out. We got this actor, John Pryor, in to ring all these people up. And we were coining it.
Oh, wow.
I mean, really coining it.
Yeah.
Really, really coining it. So I was doing that, and then I can't remember why, but I kind of got bored. And what did I do then? I was working for another company doing something similar and not enjoying it. And my mate who had owned this business, Graham, gave me a call one day. One of our clients on the debt collection side was the very company I'd been hiring synthesizers from back in the day.
Ooh.
Easy hire. And they had a rehearsal rooms and they weren't doing too well. And so he somehow or another ended up owning these studios and said, look, we've got a lot of debts for the hire company and for the studios. Can you just come in and do some accounts work for me? Just charge me whatever a day and just do that. So I said, yeah, all right. Nothing better to do. And then one day a guy called Tom Newman turned up in a big truck in which he had a mobile recording studio. Tom Newman was the producer of Tubular Bells. And he turned up with this recording studio in this truck. And he and Graham talked, and it was decided that he would move it out of the truck and put it into a room in this big old building and rehearsal rooms, and they'd actually start something called Easy Studios. So they started building it. Within, I don't know, 2-3 weeks of them doing that, suddenly they needed a hand moving a big, metal joist, an RSJ, up some stairs, and then some hand with some cement, and then woodwork, and I became a builder's labourer, essentially building this recording studio,
right,
without really meaning to. And then, oddly, on the day that the studio was due to open, the assistant engineer was off somewhere getting. He was unwell, as they say. He was a little unwell. And so I sat in as the assistant engineer, and I did that because I knew synthesis, so I knew a lot of this stuff.
Right.
I wasn't very good at it. I didn't have the discipline of being a studio engineer, but I had a really clear idea how all of this worked. And that was kind of the start. And that I've been doing that one way or the other ever since.
Can you take the time to read Tape Pusher's comment real quick?
Why is it that info not pushed out on the company transparently? Wouldn't it be better if it was pushed rather than having to be pulled on individuals upon request? This was back in the late 70s, early 80s, 1979. There was no internet. All the records for companies, there was no online stuff. It was all paper submissions, which they had to send in, and then someone somewhere in some dim, dark room somewhere would scan these bits of paper, photograph them, and they'd become microfiche, which is, you know, on a sheet this big, yay big, you might have, 50 sheets of paper as microfilm, essentially. So you'd need a microfiche reader to be able to blow them up and see them, and then you could print them off and do those things. It was just the way it was done then. So back then, it was all manual, all paper-based or film-based, and there was no other way of searching that information.
So going in and out of these, I don't know if you were in and out of this particular studio, but obviously it's led you to the arts of working with musicians.
Well, it was exactly the same time that MIDI started taking off. Well, also synthesizers. People were coming in with synths, and a lot of the, Tom and a lot of the other people, traditional, old school engineers and producers didn't really understand synths that well. And I had them, bang. I knew them straight away. So I kind of had a leg up, as it were, and I started doing night sessions and other things, and I made my first mix for Tom. He went up the pub one day and left me in the studio one evening and said, look, there's this mix up there, do what you want with it, bring me a cassette up and let me see what you can do. So I did, and I was terribly proud of this thing on cassette, and he played it, laughed and said, right, okay, you might want to not put quite so much reverb on everything. I just soaked everything in Ursa Major Space Station because I could. I didn't know any different.
Right.
So I started learning. He started teaching me about subtractive EQing rather than positive, rather than adding things all the time. It's kind of taking stuff off. And the whole thing of pulling, you get to a point in the mix, just pull every fader down and start rebuilding from scratch. You keep doing that, and you'll find the heart of the mix, and you can put out a really good mix.
Yeah.
And so I was still at that point hanging around with a lot of musicians, and I was working with a lot of musicians and starting to program synths, and I understood MIDI. There was one session we were doing. Tom had bought in a really old tape machine. It was an Ampex MM1100. It's one of the first 24 tracks, and it had been bought in by Mike Oldfield from the US to record a concert at a venue called Queen Elizabeth's Hall in London. He was doing one of his rare performances of Tubular Bells, and he bought it in, and I think 2 or 3 days before the concert it arrived, they bought it in, set it up, plugged it in, without thinking that no one had swapped it from 110 volts to 240. So they plugged it in and it just went
Damn.
right.
Yeah.
So Tom had that machine. He got it rebuilt, and we were doing a session one day, and the analog tape machines use a crystal to generate the clock, the pulses that keep the thing running at exactly 30 IPS or 15 or whatever. It's something, you need a clock signal, a quartz signal, to make everything, thank you, turn properly at the right speed.
Right.
That broke in the middle of a session, and we went and got an ARP 2600, and we generated the signal, because they were they were really stable. We generated, I think it was 15 kilohertz or something like that, and we tapped that onto where the crystal circuit was in the tape machine, and suddenly we had the session up and running again. So those kinds of budget and fix-it things were part of the thing. Part of what we all do now, you're doing it with some of your things, going, why can't I get that to work? What if I do this? You experiment and try.
Right.
So and I think within a year or less, I started freelance engineering and programming, and I think certainly within a year I had the first EMU 1. Emulator 1, and I got into partnership with someone in the studios in London called Heartbeat, and that was the journey. Then Heartbeat Studios, then Chelsea Music Studios, doing some productions, doing an awful lot of charging people, not a lot. But
now my brother and I are not familiar with these studios, but would they be on par with like our in the States, like Capitol or
Sony or
anything
Heartbeat
like
was about the same size as your studio there, but with a separate studio. Rather, that would be the control room where you are, and the studio would have been the other side of where that TV screen is.
Okay.
And so, but we had a CX5, a Yamaha CX5 computer doing MIDI. We had the Emulator 1 with a MIDI port on it. We had a lot of effects. We had a Roland 727 and 707. We had all sorts of stuff. JX3P.
What's the? I'm sorry to cut you off. We'll get right back to it, but I might lose this question. What's the acronym for the studio stand for?
Which studio?
The one right there on your.
MMO UK. Yeah. Mooses make awfully. No. It stands for Multimedia Outsourcing UK. Because when I started that business up in 2007, I had a lot of customers who were doing video and audio and whatever, and I knew I needed a limited company. And up until then, I'd been Andrew Longhurst Consulting. I started the limited company up, and I couldn't think of a name. And a pal of mine said, well, what is it you do? I said, well, I act as the multimedia outsourcing department for all of my clients. And he said, well, why don't you call it that? So I did.
Oh, well, there you go.
Well, shit. Be literal then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there you go, Steve. You nosy twat. Okay. And I hate to cut you off, Andrew, but we are at a new hour. New hour means new topic. We're gonna kind of stay with music, but we're not. We're gonna enter the realms of musicians and mental health. So my next question to you is, on your worst day mentally, when you're just mentally fucked, what's the first album or what's the first song or artist you can think of you'd want to throw on right away?
The honest answer to that is I do suffer from Black Dog. I've had a really bad Black Dog this week. First time for ages, but I've had a really bad one this week. So it happens. And the truth is, I don't want to listen to anything.
Really?
I just, when it's Black Dog, when I'm having a really bad Black Dog day, I just, nothing. I'm just, thing is, I've learned it's going to get better. So I just kind of curl up and, withdraw from the world, don't have any contact, don't answer the phone, don't do anything. But if I'm just feeling a bit low, if I'm, which is an odd thing to say, if I'm having, if I'm feeling low and whatever, it really depends. I often, I do go back to classical a bit. So I often go back to the pastoral, which I love. I will put on things like Close to the Edge by Yes. It's just so transcendently beautiful. I might put on the Con concert by oh Jesus, my brain is so dead. Pianist, improvisational pianist. Someone in the chat. Someone in the chat, give me a clue.
Some Thelonious Monk?
No. Well, yeah, I could, but that's. Here we go. I'll find it. I've got it, but no, yeah, Richard Clayton, Keith Jarrett. Manny, you're saving me here in this chat. You're saving me in this interview. Keith Jarrett did a concert called the Con Concert, and it was an improvised concert, and it was a tale of absolute. It was a car crash of a concert in many ways, in that he was ill. He really wasn't feeling up for doing it. He'd asked for a particular piano. It didn't turn up. The wrong one did. It didn't play well. It had all sorts of issues and problems. It was out of tune. They worked on it and they got it sort of halfway there. And he just kind of sat down and went, yeah, all right. And the recording of this concert, you can hear him, the piano, you can hear him stamping his foot and yelling and going, yeah, wow. You know, he gets lost in this. And I think, as a listener, for me, I get lost with him, and I'm right in the pocket with him, experiencing that performance. And it is, again, it's another of those transcendent pieces where when I'm listening to it, I'm just away, I'm gone, I'm just
Are you in your lowest mentally form possible, or is that the only time you would delve into such genre?
No, I listen to that a lot.
Okay.
You know, so sometimes if I'm editing voiceovers, you know, narration, then I'll have that on really quietly in the background, because it's a nice thing to have. You know, he did a series of concerts. So there's Tokyo, there's Lucerne, there's a whole bunch of different concerts. He did Paris, London, and they're all good. Piano music, you know, improvised piano music or otherwise, is a beautiful, calming thing. But that particular concert is the one, if I'm really down in the depths, but I'm not having a black dog day, but I'm just feeling, it pulls me through. I mean, it really does pull me through.
How do you take your? I want to go back into the black dog day. I never heard that euphemism before, but how do you? What does Andrew tell himself to get himself out of black dog days? What's the best go-to remedy? What kind of self-talk are you feeding the ego?
Again, truthfully, this is for me. There isn't any self-talk other than ride it, let it happen, let it roll over you. You know, you've been through this before. It will get better. You will see the light, no matter how bad and how hopeless and how insignificant and how useless you might feel, because that's what it's like. You know, you just feel, you know, why am I even bothering, kind of stuff.
Right.
But I know I will come through, and I will be better at the end of it, and I'll come out of it, and everything will be fine. So I just surrender myself to it, because trying to do the other stuff feels oddly unauthentic. And the one thing that you don't want when you're going through that is that inauthentic or lies or non-truths, because people will say there it'll get better. You don't want people saying that. You're just like, oh, don't want to hear that. It's an aphorism. It's nonsense. Just go away. Just let me get on with it. For other people, it's different. For other people, each of us has our own way, but for me, I just let it roll over me, and just because I know it's going to get better. And that's, we've had some things going on in our family. I'm not going to go into any detail, but that's what I advise others who have crises, is, just go with it. Let it happen. Let it happen. It's going to be okay. But you don't have to see it. You just have to know that it will be okay.
Yeah.
But
it will be okay.
Isn't that something that I agree with you 100%, because we all go through something, and we're all currently going through something. But isn't it funny that we know, a lot of us, I'm not going to generalize, but a lot of us know this. A lot of us tell ourselves, I know this is only a ripple in time in my current situation, that I'm feeling the effects of this. I know tomorrow gets better. I know the next 2 weeks, it's probably going to all go away. But why do I surrender myself to the negative bullshit? And why do I feed it so much energy when I can feed it positive thoughts? Why is it so much harder to feed the negative than it is the positive?
I think that's a really interesting thing you've just said. It's a really interesting point. I don't think I do feed the negative. Certainly my brain, my inner voice is telling me that. You know, that, you know, oh, it's not good. You know, you're not doing enough. You know, you're whatever. You're not very good at this. You're not very. You know, it's never going to work out. Why do you even bother? Blah 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 blah. That thing happens certainly. But what's worse now, and particularly for people that are really heavily engaged in social media, is you can find yourself feeding on that. Feeds it. That really feeds it. And one of the issues for an awful lot of people now is they mistake the relationships online for reality, for real people. You know, we're living in an age where you're swiping off to the right for all sorts of things,
Right.
whether it's dating or whatever, you know, all sorts of reasons you're liking or not liking. My wife was telling me that someone where she works had a job to do, which was a simple, you know, it's a job that everyone was expecting him to do, which he did. And he posted it up on the internal intranet sort of Facebook thing internally or Teams thing internally. And within 15 minutes, he's sending emails out to people or messages to people saying, why aren't you liking my article? Well, you know, I did this. And it's kind of, it's your job. It's your job. That's what you're supposed to do. We don't, you know, do you want me to like every single, and he's got this real mentality where if it's not being liked, if a post he does, there we go again, isn't being liked, he takes it really personally. He mistakes that for achievement, and it's not. So I guess, I mean, you're of an age where you remember what it was like before the internet was big time. And I can certainly remember all of it without. And it is a blessing and a curse, but the way people interact now, it worries me. That dependency, and I've noticed myself sometimes, you know, as soon as I start thinking, I'm looking at a post I've made and going, well, when's someone going to post back? And I have done it. I've looked at things and gone, oh, this is really good. Someone's going to like it. Why is no one liking it? Right. And it's kind of and I have to have a word with myself and say, you're really dependent on someone you've never met.
Right.
Liking or disliking what you've said. You really think that's important. How many people have liked it? You think that's important. And it's kind of, well, stop it. So,
right. Yeah.
And at some point it was important to you, and that should just be enough.
And to people whose opinions I really value.
Right.
You know, so like putting in the things on the popcorn stuff, that's been kind of cool because an awful lot of people that are watching your show watch ours, and we've started, you know, the community we have is really good. And let's be, you know, real here. An awful lot of people here take part in these in the whole community, the wider community, lots of different shows, without ever expecting to be madly famous or, you know, rich beyond their wildest dreams from having made a hit record. We do it because we can't not. Again, coming back to that. And so the praise of people who have taken time out to engage with this, you know, all the guys in the chat, everyone, guys, gals, and whoever else, whatever your thing is, all the people that engage with these chats, they know stuff. We all know different amounts, and some of us are better at something than another, but they've taken time out to listen to these things. And when they say, yeah, you know what, that's pretty good, that's brilliant, I don't care if someone I've never met and who doesn't have that kind of kudos, that credibility, because all the people in the chat do have that credibility. They wouldn't be here if they weren't doing something in this sphere. Right. So if they say, do you know what, that's not bad, that's like, yeah, it's great.
Right.
I'd rather that than almost anything else.
I have a hypothetical for you, but Steve made a good comment, just an overall comment that I just want to touch real quick. Positivity takes work. Negative is just super easy.
Do you know what? That's absolutely right. The easiest thing to do is to be lazy and let the negative stuff come through, because it's easy. You can just let that little, we're on Monkey Island, so you let that little monkey inside of you do its primal thing, and, you know, it's really easy to let that out of the cage
Right.
and to just let that happen. So you're right, positivity takes work, but the more you do it, the more it comes back to you, and the less work you need to do. It becomes a way of life. If, you know, we are all very tempted, I think, at different points in our lives to critique others, to look at someone and say, look at the way that person's driving. Jesus, can you believe it? Look at how he took that turn. You know, Jesus, man, what's going on? What's that person dressed like? How could they? It's really easy to do all of that because so many people do. It's just easy to fall into that. The harder thing initially to do is just go, oh, good on them. You know, okay. If they do something really stupid, you just go, that was a bit silly, but, you know, hopefully they're all right. No one's got hurt. Let's move on. And to smile, you know, to do that. Here I am. It's great to see you. Not insincerely, not the have a nice day, but have a nice day. No, really. Have a nice day. Have a great weekend.
Right. But then you get those who would just, they much rather talk about you behind your back because they feel like they can, or if it's right for them. You know, I can go ahead and just say what I want because this is who I am, and it's
easy.
It's easy, and
that's easy to deal with.
But what I wanted to tell you from your last point is, no one likes being in the negative state. Nobody enjoys that, and that takes no practice. Why is the human genome so comfortable with it when we know being positive is where we much rather be?
Yeah.
Do you know? I think you're wrong. I think. And I don't mean this, you know, don't take this the wrong way, even though you're a bass player.
Oh God.
I think I know where you're going with this.
Seriously, I think it's a very comfortable place to be for some people.
Yes.
Being negative is comfortable because you don't have to change. Change is frightening.
Right? Yeah, I hear you on that. I agree.
And we are all tribal. As a species, we're tribal. Each of us have our tribes. It might be the first tribe is our family, or your brothers, and then there's your sisters, and then there's your parents. That's three different tribes, all within the same family. And then there's the people you know next door, the neighborhood. And then there's the people in the neighborhood, you know, just up the road. That's another tribe. And then there's the city. There's the north of the city, the south of the city. There's other cities. Each of these are tribes. And then there's within those tribes, there are some that like this music and other music, and some that like motorbikes and other, you know, some that like, you know, we are very tribal. We gather together. And because we're tribal by inclination, it is very easy to slip into the wanting by agreement to seem wise. So if your tribe is saying, this is the thing, let's not do, you know, people with blue eyes shouldn't be allowed here, bloody people with blue eyes. Yeah, I agree. You know, because you don't want to appear out of step, because you want to be tribal. So,
but we have to have polarities in life. You know, we that's part of
they're
being
there
human.
whether you want them or not.
Right. That's the way of the world. It's being human. Here's my hypothetical question. My hypothetical question for you. A person walks up to you and they've completely had it with life. They haven't spoken to anyone. You just bump into this person. They relay this message on to you. What are some of the things you can think of to try and save this person's life?
Time. Give them your time. Give them your time. Whatever you're doing, it's not as important as that person at that time. So you give them time. You make them feel like someone cares. And you don't just make them feel like it and then walk off. You actually spend time with them and help them navigate that. I've done this many times. You know, I've seriously done this many times because people have sort of done not quite that with me, but people have done that with me. I've never been quite in that position where that's happened. But if people are really having a bad time, then you owe it to them. You pay it forward, because you know you don't know when it's going to happen for you either. But you give them your time and your care and your love. That's hard to come by. And a lot of people in that position feel like they're not worthy of it, they don't deserve it. You give it anyway, and you give it unconditionally, and you help them in the best way you can, which is by being there and, you know, just spending the time with them. It's not about throwing lots of money at them. It's about trying to find a way to help them to first of all understand what the problem is that they're having, and then try to help them move forward on that. You've got a phone they may not have. If someone's homeless, how the flipping heck are they going to get hold of the different departments? What address are they going to have for those departments to get hold of them?
Right.
So it might be that what you do is you buy them a freaking phone, a cheap handset and a SIM card, and you load it up and you say, there you go. You can now be contacted. And if you need an address, here's my office, or here's my home, or here's a something. Use this. I will make sure I will come and find you. You keep in touch with me. I will come and find you and let you know what's going on. And you do it. You see it through. That doesn't take a huge amount of time, but it makes a huge amount of difference.
Right. I'm not going to make this a blanket statement, because we're all musicians and we all have a love for music. And
I don't. I'm lying.
Well, of course you don't.
Right. How many musicians have you run into that struggle? And just give me a percentage that struggle with mental health and have a hard time coping with things, but you can see the passion and the burn in them is still there.
That's a good but difficult question, and the reason being, I'm firmly convinced that anyone who is creative, whether it's music,
yes,
or painting, photography, video, filmmaking, whatever, singing, poetry, writing, anyone that's in the creative arts has a tendency to be on the scale, as it were, to be somewhere on that scale of autism, ADHD. We have those, OCD. We all of us have some of those tendencies, and or moments of absolute exhilaration and crushing sort of depression about something, almost bipolar. I'm not saying everyone is bipolar, but we have some of those. Everyone in the creative arts, I think, has those tendencies. Mm-hmm. My doctor once said to me, I went in to see him about something, I can't remember what it was for. It was something, innocuous. I don't know, can't remember. But whatever it was, I was there talking to him, and I was, this is what's happening, and and he said, Andrew. I said, yeah. He said, do you realise you've got like a twitch? Your shoulder keeps do you realise that? And I went, no, really? And I'm doing all this, right? And my hands are doing weird things, and I had no idea I was doing it. And I said, oh Christ, what is it? Have I got some sort of neurological thing? He went, yeah, you're alive. He said, you're a musician and a producer. You're a creative. He said, almost every creative I know that comes through here has one of the symptoms of one of these things, and one of which is twitches, or it might be stuttering, or it might be any number of things. Sometimes they can seem, musicians, photographers, all of us can seem alarmingly unempathic, and I say that even though we are deeply empathic, because we kind of that's part of the thing, but we can come across as that because we find it difficult sometimes, I think, being as involved with people as they would like us to be. Mm-hmm. I'm just throwing this out there now because I've no idea. I find it, if I go out, people think I'm stupid gregarious. I'm really out there. I'm the most outrageously gregarious, personable person in the world. And I can do that professionally. I can go out and I will be the life and soul and the center of everything. And God, people know I'm there, mm-hmm. because that's my job. Because I have to make sure things run right, and so I make sure I'm the focal point, because that's my gig, to be the focal point, to make sure everything happens. But once that's over and it's kind of right, let's go and have a few drinks or a party, or let's go and do something social. I'm about 2 hours in, and I will suddenly get this switch come on, and I'll go, right, now I'm going. And it's really weird. People have made note of it. I'll be doing this thing, and then people will think that I'm this really gregarious, outgoing chap, and I'll suddenly go, that's enough. And I've discovered I'm actually quite an introvert. And I think that's the case for an awful lot of people. I think it's a case for an awful lot of musicians. And
Yep.
do you guys find that?
Oh,
yeah.
100%. My brother and I are introverts.
Introverts
To a degree. To a large degree.
Listen, I don't mean, I mean, there just comes a point, doesn't there?
Right. Where, I much rather choose to be in this studio more times
than going out,
than interacting with people. And I don't have this overwhelming doom and gloom about society and others and other people's ideation when I go out in the world and I talk to people on a random. I just prefer not to deal with it because there are so many different ideas and so many different ideations that, most I think will appeal to me, but most or some won't, know, and to have to entertain certain things and then take a part of me away that I know I have to put away just to have a conversation with someone, it happens too frequently. And I don't like putting myself in that position because a big part of my persona on Monkey Island is I want to be me, 100% unapologetic me. And I want to say the things I want to say without having anyone come back at me with negativity on it. And why are you being you? I don't like you being you. Then find another channel. It's not so easy when you're out there in public. It's not so easy when you have to do a 9-to-5 with people you don't mesh with. It's not so easy when you have to go talk to someone on the phone. You have absolutely no idea who they are, how they think, but what's for certain for me is everyone that's in our chat right now,
it's like good enough.
They are okay with us, and we are okay with them.
And that's a big part of being reclusive in that introvertism. You may not be 100% what they say, because we have lives, right? We go out, we grocery shop, we have this, we have YouTube, and we can still socialize. But he's got a big point that this is why people are becoming more introvert-esque, is because there's not a whole lot out there dealing with some forms of society. Not generalizing, saying all, but
they're just not dealing with the truth of society.
Yeah. And it's hard to be accepted for who you really are.
Because my brother and I will be outside and we'll walk past someone, and my brother will say, "How are you doing?" And they have this weird mantra where all they do is say, "Oh, hi," and keep walking. And it's like, no, how are you doing? And people look at you weird when you want to fucking follow up. It's like we're suffering from something far greater than ourselves. I think we're losing the war of humanity and being sociable towards each other and literally caring for one another. Now it looks like you look completely retarded and weird if you ask someone how they're doing. Stop them and ask them, no, how are you doing? Have a conversation with me for about 5 minutes. Give me at least a 2-minute synopsis before you go walking off, And just from the lack of conversation is what is dooming our mentalities, period. Because we're ultimately sociable creatures. You can't stick one of us in space and expect us to be in outer space the rest of our lives. We would go fucking mad. But yet here we are on this planet and we're separating ourselves from each other. We're afraid to have a conversation with each other. We're afraid to shake each other's hand. We're afraid to tell someone, hey, I'm going to do this for you with no contract binding. I'm going to meet you somewhere. We're going to discuss certain things. Look me in the eye.
Or this is how I'm feeling. This is what I'm going through.
Right.
There's a whole bundle there to unpack. So, and I'd really like to, because you've made some really astute and great observations there. Really, really good. Just to deal with some of the chat that's in some of the stuff that's going on in the chat. Being an introvert, or being tending towards introvertedness, not being, but being, tending towards introvertedness. I've done a lot of touring with bands over the years, and there's nothing better than being on a stage in front of however many thousands, tens of thousands of people and playing and getting that you get that rush from the thing. But do you know what the best thing is? You've spent time, we talked about this way back at the beginning, you spent time in rehearsal rooms with those musicians on stage, and you formed a bond, and the people you're actually playing for are those guys on stage, those people you're doing this with. And the people out there, it's great you get that reaction, and it's nice to see, but guess what, you can't really see the faces, the individual, you can't pick out every single one of 500 people, let alone 1,000 or 10,000 or 20, you can't pick them out. So it's a generalized sort of, that's great, you've done a great job. But it's more about how you're feeling on stage and the fact that you've done that. So you can do that thing, and it's not about the 10,000 people and being an extrovert. It's about having that smaller group of people whom you trust and being tight with them. So that's just one thing. I think the thing with you said about people not being sociable. I read a lot of history, and we're going through some weird times at the moment, but the world has been going through these times many times before. It's cyclical in different parts of the world over periods that last anything from 6 months to 200 years, 300 years. We're going through a cycle at the moment, and not all of it is good. We had it happen over here when we had Brexit happen, and we went from a country where the voting was roughly left, right, and then the vast majority was found in the centre, and there were variations either side of it, but that's what the voting curve looked like, and that's what people's political leanings tended to be. To after Brexit, or during Brexit and after Brexit, and it's the same thing you're suffering from in the States, being left, right, and this, with no centre ground at all. It was almost impossible to cross that divide. Part of the reason for that is people who were people like me who are pretty good at voicing an opinion and putting together a cogent argument, were dismissing people whose views are the polar opposite and saying, no, you're wrong, you're stupid, how can you think that? Demeaning them, pushing them even further away, because guess what? No one likes to be told they're stupid. And no one likes to think that their viewpoint doesn't matter, and it does matter. But I think an awful lot of us pushed those people to one side. We ended up on the other side, and all of a sudden we've got this vacuum. Before Brexit, we could all of us meet in pubs, and we'd have people from lots of different political and socio-economic areas, completely mixed bag, and we would still talk, and we would still chat and discuss, and may have wildly different views about things, but we could have a drink or a pint or a coffee or whatever together and still be friends. I had lots of friends who were from all over the political spectrum and or the religious spectrum, the socio-economic spectrum. That kind of went, and at the moment it's about trying to build those bridges and get people talking again, right? And the other thing is, I think the other thing is that, and we're going through that, and we've seen this before, it did happen, 70, 80 years ago in Germany. We saw that happening, what's going on in the States, and what's been happening over here as well. But you also talked about the idea that where was I going with this? Come on, give me a clue, boys.
About this, the distancing ourselves from the conversation.
No, actually, it was something you said way back, actually, Lamar, as well, which was people. It's the whole people getting into politics and talking behind your back and stuff. Right?
Oh yes.
And also about why won't people engage with me? All I'm doing is going up to them and saying, hello, why can't they spend time talking to me? One thing I do know is we don't know what's going on in other people's heads.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
We don't. And so you can't expect everyone to act in the way what may seem reasonable to each of us may seem totally unreasonable to other people.
Exactly.
And the second thing is you cannot get someone to like you. And people's opinions of you, unless you know you're being a dick, people's opinions of you shouldn't matter as much as your own opinion of yourself. We know what we're about, right? We do.
But I find it very hard, Andrew, that some people just don't want to open their mouths, Andrew. Like, everybody wants to say something and just be heard, no matter if you're on the same page with this individual or not. It's just a hard thing. It's their choice, and and I get it. I find it frustrating as well, but I think the best you can do is just give them a smile, say, look, another time. Be good to chat. I'd love to chat to you one day. You look really interesting. Right.
It's like, those phone calls you have, or the phone calls you get from people, or the ones you have to make to a call center to get something sorted out about a subscription or a bill or a power thing or whatever it is, right? Mobile phone. And you know that the person at the other end has probably had a really shitty day.
Right.
They've had days and days of shitty days with people ringing up and basically shouting at them, just going, "You fucking bastards, how dare you!" So every single call I have like that, I always make sure I just say, "Oh, what's your name again? How do you pronounce that?" "Great. Listen, how are you today? How are you today?" I'm like, "What? No, really, how are you? Are you having a good day, a bad day?" I'm going to tell you right now, before we go any further, you may or may not be able to help me out, but we're going to have a really nice conversation.
I do the same thing, Andrew. I do the exact same thing.
And isn't it good?
It always turns out great for them, more so than me.
But it's a good thing to do.
It is.
It is.
And it's a conversation that
it is.
You're on the phone anyway, so let's conversate.
And I think I think it catches most people off guard because
they're not used to it.
They're not used to it at all.
Let's be honest. How many Andrews, Lamonts are contacting these people?
There's no one else out there that's as attractive. Let's be reasonable.
As me, as
everyone else is trying.
Yeah, you're correct. You're correct.
Yeah. It's a hard thing. I would think it would be easier as a stranger if a stranger walked up to me and said, "Hey man, how are you doing?" Like in a total calm. Maybe the environment makes it more enticing to release on someone, right? But most people say talk to a therapist, and sometimes that's not an easy thing to do. To go somewhere, talk to a professional, that most have their own ideations, that most have their own therapist, and those therapists have a therapist. So that's not always the best thing to do. What, for me and our experience, if you look at a person like Uncle Jerry in Uncle Jerry's World, right? He sought out this channel. Uncle Jerry has been...
He's very cool, by the way.
He's very cool, but he's been in some dark places mentally with his family. He's told, our community this.
Since Samurai got him out of it.
He comes to this channel specifically to keep him in a positive light, and that's it. All people need to do, and my brother and I have many times with many people from our community as symptoms of reality, we'd be right in the middle of a jam, and all of a sudden somebody says something in chat that either looks concerning or I took it in a concerning way, and we stop all of our playing, we turn around to the microphones and say, "Oh, tell me more about that." "Oh, how so?" Because it fucking matters. When people come here, you're not just going to be another fucking number. I'm not going to overlook you. I'm sitting right here doing my best to scroll through the comments to see exactly what's going on. A lot of people are really chatty about this because I'm sure they're going through something too.
Similar.
And we all have to carry this fucking weight. It's not always about music, and I get it, I didn't get this at a younger age in my 30s. And I couldn't tell you why it's been more pressing and more concerning. And I just think I can feel the energy on people that, you know, the number one thing that needs to be talked about is mental health. And like I said, I'm not going to make it a blanket statement only for musicians, because that's what we are. And it's a big fucking issue. It's a huge issue.
It is, yeah. I mean, part of that as well is, though, because music is one of, you know, it's a very curious art in that there's no, you can't see it. It's not visual. I mean, it is for me in my head, and for most musicians, you see a picture when you're making music. It's like a picture show, right? But it's not visual. And so you're having a conversation with someone with music, and you don't know what they're going to make of it or what that conversation is exactly, but you're putting something out there and people listen. And so you can do that. You know, you can do that shit, and that's just, you know, bom, 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 you know, whatever it is. But then you can get lost in it, and that's kind of translating a whole bunch of stuff. And it can be the time of day. It can be sunlight that's come through a tree branch whilst you're waiting at the traffic lights to get going. The sunlight's just suddenly come through, and it's just gone, and it's made you feel a touch of the divine or something. And then you go, and that ends up, or someone shouted at someone else, and you go, oh man. Or someone's died, or someone's been born. There's these moments in our lives. You know, a dog runs along the street with a weird walk, and you're laughing at it, right? You go,
right.
Look at that, right? That feeds into all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It feeds into it, and I think the mental health. So I'm going to share something with you here that this is something I wasn't anticipating doing on here, but I'm going to share something with you.
Okay.
Oh yeah, Manny, Dom was he was a force of nature in taking care of people. He went the whole 9 yards, did Dom. And you know, I didn't even get to know him. You know, I've met him online, I think twice or three times. But what was going on in the world around it, he was an extraordinary man, and as these guys are. So,
wait, Andrew,
there was a point.
Can you before you make that? I'm sorry, but can you touch on this Dom person, because we don't know who you guys are referencing?
I know who he's referencing. I actually sampled him in Inky.
Oh, okay.
For the Inky Jam.
Never mind.
Yeah, I had to watch a few Dom shows.
Okay.
But yeah.
So, as I said, I didn't really know him that well. I hardly knew him at all, but I knew what he did, and I knew the effect he had on the community, and he had everyone, anyone that, you know, he had people's backs, and he didn't need to do that. You know, he was doing well. He cared, and he made a big difference, and that's kind of what it's about. So, where was I going? Oh yeah, so. I'm on my what I call my last marriage. It's my second, as is my wife. We both had an unsuccessful marriage before, and for whatever reason, our previous marriages failed. Neither of us was to blame, and I'm not even sure. In my case, I don't think either of us was to blame. It was just, you know, it just didn't work out for whatever reason.
Right.
But there came a point after it where I was looking back at my life, and I was feeling very down, and you know. Life wasn't going well, and I'm just looking at my life, and I think I was in my 40s at the time, and I was just looking back at it and going, flip me, this carries on. You know, every time I start building something, doing something significant, it falls apart. Something goes wrong. You know, this deal, this opportunity, this business, this relationship, it keeps on sort of, I just end up with it going bang. The only thing that's in common with all of these things is me. So there's something wrong somewhere, right?
Right.
I need to go and get this sorted out. So I went and searched for a therapist, and I went through 4 of them, three of them I just didn't like. One of them, I wanted to kill him. He just did this thing where he said, "So Andrew, tell me, if you do that one more time, I'm going to put this down.
Yeah.
I just, and I was really fortunate. I found this one guy who was the head of therapy, the therapists, whatever it is, psychotherapy association in the area. And he was due to retire. And for some reason, he took me on and he said, look, come and see me. You've got an hour each week and, we'll just see where you are. So I went. And the very first time I went there, and this is something which I'm telling you this because it makes me laugh so much now. So I went in and he said, so what's going on? What are you here for? I said, well, I just feel like, no matter what I do, there's nothing I can do which some fucker, I was so full of anger, some fucker won't take away from me and will just point, it's God's looking down and going, I'm going to snatch that away from you. I'm going to make you suffer. And so and he said, what do you want to do about it? I said, well, if I ever meet God, I just want to walk up to him and go, listen, listen, just come here and bang him and deck him and put him on the floor and say, that's how it feels. That's how it fucking feels. And I was just off on one. I mean, I was really off on one.
Right.
And he just sat back. He sort of just sat back and went, He said, okay. That's really interesting. He said, so do you otherwise think you're rational? And I said, yeah, science. And he said, yeah. He said, okay. So you're really angry at God. Yeah. He said, so I'm just interested to know, and we're going to finish after I've asked you this question. I don't want to hear an answer. I just want you to go away and think about it. How flipping arrogant are you? How arrogant are you to think that if there's a God, he, she, it is going to be looking at you and focusing all their attention on you out of 6 billion or 7 billion people on the planet, and they're going to focus all their power just to frustrate you? How arrogant do you think that is? Do you really think that bears any possible kind of, does that stand up to examination? You think that someone out of all the people on the planet, he's going to focus his attention on you? Now go away and I'll see you next week. And that did me. That just did me. Because all of a sudden, and I came back, I only went to him 8 times, times, and I was good. I was really good.
So he gave you a mental ass kicking, basically.
He gave me the biggest mental ass kicking he gave me a shovel and a great big boot on a stick to give myself an ass kicking with, because what he said was, stop blaming someone else. This is you. We need to work out what that is. And that, that was all about a younger me and my, not growing up and, being emotionally immature and play. There's a whole bunch of stuff there. But it didn't take long to recognize it and start dealing with it. And I met my wife almost in the middle of those sessions, my now wife, and I have never been happier. Right? But it's just it's really funny. God, yeah, right, has a facility. Listen, this isn't about God. This is about me essentially being really, really angry and just finding anyone to blame but myself. And the only thing that was in common, as I said when I went along, when I started this little piece of this off, was the only thing in common was me. But what I hadn't done is make that next step to go, well, if it's you, what is it about you? And I just transferred all of that to someone else. And said, it's someone else's fault. It wasn't. It was mine. It was mine. At the very least, I had to learn to start taking responsibility for my actions and living with the consequences. And I think that's hard. Yeah. That's hard.
We are approaching another new hour. Is there anything you want to say to close this out?
Mine's going to go into the next hour, and I'm waiting to ask it. Okay. It's the laid back hour.
So while we're still on mental health for just 2 more minutes, I just want to tell everyone, if you're struggling with something, speak to someone. But also know that just because today seems like shit, or yesterday was shit, or you have this notion that tomorrow will be shit, how long will you stay in it? And how long does it take you to identify that They never last. Your life is still going to go on. Time waits for no man, even with a slow hand. You have to figure out things on the fly and keep it moving forward.
Make some wrong decisions. That's fine.
Make wrong decisions.
lot.
That's what it's all about.
Make decisions, no matter whether they're wrong or right. Make the decisions, because if you get used to making those decisions, if you've made a wrong one, you can make the right one next time. You can keep making decisions.
There was somebody I followed on YouTube, and he said, you know, your perceivable bad moment or your bad day is just a happiness thought away. Meaning you can't find happiness, you create happiness.
Right.
Happiness is something you choose. It's not anything out there that's going to make you happy.
Right.
That bass guitar may fulfill a certain need, and you may be happy for that moment, but it's not going to complete you. That endless void is going to always be a void. You have to choose to be happy.
Right.
And I know it's easier said than done.
Yeah.
Like we all know this.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you have to choose. You can stay in the funk and let it climb all over you. And God knows I know all about that. Or you can take the time out, acknowledge your shit, and say, you know what? Today is enough. Today, I'm going to choose something other.
Right. Not everyone is lucky to have a crest head come in on your channel and change your mood for you. Sometimes you just got to figure out a way to do it for you. Those of you who caught that, Wagyu. Okay, before we move on, Wagyu says, ask him about the music video he's in that's got 104 million views.
That's what I was going to ask. I'm curious to know. Let it rip.
God. So I'm in a music video that got more views in the same year as Thriller was released. Got more views than Thriller.
What? You're just now sharing this?
Yeah. Well,
For fuck's sake, Andrew. Tell us more.
So you remember I said earlier about being somewhat of an introvert. I don't really get off on talking about the fame things. I've been through it, and I really quickly I had an experience, my very first production, where I had a bottle of champagne delivered to the studio after the record label had been in to hear the first couple of tracks we were working on. I got a big magnum of champagne with a bottle of Tabasco sauce on the side of it and a card from the head of A&R saying, for a shit hot producer, right? The worst thing that ever happened to me. I believed it. I believed it.
Yeah.
And it was the worst thing that happened to me because I believed it. So, I got better later on, but that was a bad thing. So I don't really get off on the fame thing or the whatever. It's a band called Womack and Womack, and they've got a song called Footsteps. Footsteps on the dance floor. Yeah, Footsteps. It was a massive hit, and I can't tell you too much more. I'm in it. You'll see me in it doing the engineering and all that stuff, and I can't tell you too much more for reasons which I will explain offline at some point. But yeah, I'm in that. I got my first house.
Ooh. Can we link the video? Could we do that so people can see it?
You could, but you're likely to get a copyright strike.
Oh.
Okay, well, we could watch it. Put it in Discord somewhere.
Yeah, somebody put it in Discord.
Yeah, put a link in. You can put a link in so that people can go and watch it themselves.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I've got a mullet.
Steve's
I've got
on
a
it.
mullet. And I can share with you that Womack and Womack colloquially were known as Womack and Won't Pay.
Oh. Well, Tracker says we'll know the song because I'm not familiar, but I'm horrible when it comes to names.
Yeah.
But when you play the music, I'm like, oh yeah, obviously I've heard that music.
Yeah, you'll know it as soon as you hear it. You'll know it. It's a banger on the dance floor. Always gets people up. Yeah, it's got a lot of
fucking Andrew Longhurst.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're in a new hour. I don't want to waste a minute in this hour. This is Fantasyland. This is what Monkey Island is all about. We like to take our minds elsewhere. We like to think about an array of things A lot of things we talk about in Fantasyland, some we believe, some we just wanted to have a great conversation on. And it's just, we're very inquisitive people, and I like to think about this world in ways most people don't think about. And my brother is the same, and it's just fucking fun. So, first question.
Teardrops, you're right, not footsteps. What a twat. Thank you. Apologies. Here we go. I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy.
Okay.
All that.
First question, Andrew.
Yeah.
Get it together, man. Leave chat alone. First question.
Yes.
Do you have a religious belief, or do you, or is that something you don't want to talk about?
I don't mind talking about it at all. Yes. And it constantly evolves. So my mother had a very simple Baptist faith, and it was strong with her until the day she died. And I was with her in the last... Yes, it is me on the desk. I was with her in the last 2 weeks of her life. We brought her up here from London. Long story, but she got 7 extra years up here, and we had, it was really good. Of a big family, I was the one that ended up taking care of her, and I didn't think it would ever be me that did that. So yeah, we had that go. Sorry, what was the question?
There's just if you had a religious background.
Yeah, right, the religious thing. So, I watched my mother die. She had a very, not particularly bad chest infection in the end of January one year, the beginning of that new year, 2013. And we called the docs, and they said, yeah, we just take her to hospital and she'll have some antibiotics, she'll be better. She was 93 at the time. And she said, no. We said, what? She said, no, I'm ready. It's my time. I want to move on. And that was kind of what? And she said, look, I'm ready. And it took 2 weeks. She became more and more ill. The lung, she got chest infection, and then her organs started failing. And something which I did have to carry for a long while with her, she had the greatest death. I mean, it stopped me being frightened of death completely. Death is a welcome release, and she believed the next stage was the next stage, and I believe that as well. But so she died, and on the evening she died, she was getting raggedy breath, and the doctor visited and said, look, there's an a morphine patch. If we can stick it on her here, it will help ease things. It will ease her pain. She wasn't really in pain. It will ease her pain, and if you feel it would help, you can put another one on in a couple of hours, and that will ease it even more. What they were saying was, we can help her, just stop it. She won't feel anything. It's euthanasia, essentially, isn't it? And I was given the job of saying, put the first one on and put the second one on. And for a long time, I carried that guilt that I killed my mum. Right? That's hard.
Right.
That's hard. But I didn't. I mean, it was doing what one has to do. So, and I'd been ambiguous about faith. At one point back in the 80s, stroke 90s, I was based out of the church studios in North London in Crouch End. It was the Eurythmics studio, and it had big SSLs, and it had a big AMEC desk upstairs and a huge hall. And we got contacted by someone, by the London, the Inspirational Choir, which was a London-based gospel choir. And they wanted to record an album, but they wanted to record it live in what had been a proper church. So they brought the band in. We had to work out how to put the band in, all the different instruments, and an audience, and then essentially do an entire service, like a church service, but with proper recording and whatever. So we did that. We set it up so we could do that, and thank you very much, go back. And it was a joyous thing. And I just remember after we'd done the recording, we're listening back and just doing a couple of overdubs. And I was using technology that no one had used before, an ambisonic microphone and all sorts of other things. And the guys there, they were really cool. And they were joyous. They were fantastic musicians, but they were just full of joy. And that stuck with me, that kind of, oh, right. And I wasn't particularly religious at the time. I, dabbled with Buddhism, various other things, but I wasn't particularly religious. Mm-hmm. And then a while later, after I'd done another, I was approached by another group called the S.O.R sisters. There were two guys called the Ethnic Boys, Marcus Johnson and Steve Campbell, who were producing this group of sisters, the S.O.R sisters, who came again from the gospel background, but these guys were doing things in more of a sort of a hip hop style, that kind of thing. But with these beautiful, beautiful vocals. And we did this album. I mean, it was a brilliant album to work on. Their voices, you can find it on the YouTube. Mm-hmm. Their voices, man, and the oldest sister, Sandra, unfortunately, was on a flight to Australia not long after the album had been released, and she got a deep vein thrombosis, died on the flight.
Wow.
But I remember talking with them and them not doing anything, not pushing God down my throat, but just being what they were. They did what my mother did, which was they lived the life. They didn't preach, they just lived the life, and they lived by example. And they were extraordinary, and that really gave me pause for thought. And when I moved up here, I'd left a girlfriend in London, and she wanted to split up with me, and I was in pieces. And I rang up one of the guys, the drummer, Nicky Brown. I rang up this guy, Nicky Brown, and just said, I don't know what to do. I'm feeling, I can't sleep. I'm so upset and in pieces. My heart is broken. What do I do? And he says, just pray, man. I went, what? He said, yeah, just pray. I said, well, what do I pray? He said, just pray. Just pray. Just say, can you make this stop for me? Just help me through this. Let me get some sleep. Just ask God. Just ask him. What, if he doesn't, you're not going to be any worse off, are you? Just do it. See what happens. And didn't do anything else. Got off the phone. I got down. I said pretty much exactly that, and it was like a cloud had been lifted. Right? I suddenly felt at peace, calm, tranquil. Got into bed, had a best night's sleep, and although I was a bit more, sort of a little upset the next day, nothing like it had been. That was the first thing, and I just thought there's more to this, right?
Right.
And then I was still not persuaded because I was a scientist as well, right? I followed science, and God wasn't possible in science. Only then quantum physics came along, and suddenly the detail in the bits that are missing, the brain theory and everything else in quantum physics means that God is not just possible but extremely likely. That was interesting. That was interesting because suddenly it was scientifically possible that it could be. Lots of people will poo-poo this and say, no, that's nonsense, blah blah. And that's fine. Everyone's welcome to their own thing. I never tell people what to do, but so I was thinking about this, and before Liz and I got married, I started going to church a lot, Church of England, and I became a crucifer for a while, and I got confirmed, and I did it for a while, and then I just kind of backed away from it. It didn't feel, the structure of the Church of England didn't feel comfortable to me, but I still had my daily chat with God, or wherever I was, I'd sometimes say so. And then the thing that sealed it for me, and people here, I can't believe I'm talking about this. This is something I tell. So, I went on a stag weekend before I got married. Some friends took me off. They paid for me and a bunch of 7 or 8 of us to go to Barcelona, which is notorious as a kind of party town. And we went there and we did a lot of heavy drinking the first night. We were there for 3 or 4 nights. The second night, we're out, and one of my nephews was with me and a bunch of other people, and there's a place called Las Ramblas. It's a long walk down to the harbour, which goes up to this big building at the other end. So, and that has roads either side of it with a pedestrian walkway in the middle and cafes and things, and it was full of prostitutes. Full. This is kind of middle of, I don't know, May or something. There were hundreds. It's about a mile long, and there were hundreds of them. And a lot of the boys I were with were doing what boys do when they're drunk and, you know, on these weekends. They were kind of, yeah, well, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I'd just been sort of engaging with the church a bit more. And I was leaning back against a subway entrance. There was like a stairway down to the side. And I was just leaning back, and my fellows had gone off, you know, 6, 7, 8 of them or whatever, just wandered off. They were about, I don't know, 50 yards away, 50 meters away. And these 2 prostitutes came over to me and started hitting on me to go with them to do this thing. And to this day, I don't know why I did this. I can't for the life of me think why. And I just said, because I'd never done this before, I just went, sorry, no, you know, Christian. Just did that. Christian. And it was like they'd been bitten. They just stood back and then turned around and walked off. And I just thought, that's a bit odd. You know, they probably obviously don't like priests. And this was before mobile phones were really, really fast. You know, so texting, you know, you didn't... News didn't travel electronically that fast at this time. This was back in 2002, 23, 24, not 20, 2003, 2004. So I started walking to catch up with the boys, and as they're walking through, you know, up this main thing, by this time they're about 100 yards ahead. They were being swarmed by these ladies offering their services and hassling them to go off with them and, you know, do all this stuff. They were sort of being jostled in this. I was walking down this thing, and wherever I walked, these women just disappeared. I mean, they just weren't walking in the same direction. I had this clear path to the boys, and no matter what I did, if I stopped, you know, they didn't come near me. If I carried on walking, we walked the whole length, and I didn't get trouble once. Not then, and not for the rest of the time we were there. Not once. And it wasn't, you know, there was no way that, and there were hundreds, I mean hundreds there, and everyone else was getting hassled by them. Every other tourist, every other man was getting hassled by them. It's like I had a shield around me, right?
Right.
And I just remember thinking, that's interesting. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
And so what my faith is at the moment, I believe there is a God. I believe in following the tenets of love thy neighbour, do unto others as you would have to do unto yourself, and just basically don't be a dick, right?
Right.
And help wherever you can. And it evolves and it changes, and sometimes I feel the need to go to a church or to a sacred space, and often I don't. But both Liz and I have a faith, but we really do not advertise it, bang on about it. But yeah, I've got that as a faith.
Yeah.
And
so there you go.
And you can find most of those morals in just being a decent human being, right? Like
they are. That's exactly what they are. They're being moral, and yeah, that's yeah.
Yeah. So would you consider that a divine intervention, or have you ever experienced anything supernatural like a divine intervention, or have seen anything?
That was it.
That was it. That was so powerful.
I can't tell you, because listen, it doesn't matter what I say. There will be people that will say, well, this happened. You know, people come up with explanations. I was there, and you know, for me at that time, that was a freaking miracle. It just was, and it was a kind of, oh right, so you're gonna call on that, are you? Okay,
yeah.
See how you like this. Bloody hell! It was a real sort of whoa, and
So
I don't feel. Go on.
So it could have been demonic forces, and you were in a light of propelling it away.
I don't know if it. No, I don't think demonic forces. I just think I don't know what I. The truth is, I don't know what I think. I just know how it felt at the time, which was like I had a shield around me, and that I wasn't going to get hassled, and I wasn't the whole time I was there. After that, I didn't get hassled once. I mean, 5 meters. Just like there's this. It was extraordinary. It was extraordinary. And I don't need to make that a thing that people have to believe or not.
And Andrew,
I just know what I felt.
Andrew,
yeah.
I'm going to tell you something that I never want you to forget. When you're on our show, we're not going to come up with answers as to what you saw, how you feel. We have faith in our man to deliver us a full and honest story. But we're not gullible by any standard, but when you sit here and you tell me something like this, we're not going to put answers as to what you experienced and if it's hogwash or not. I, for one, solely am in tune to that there's more than meets the eye with this universe, this dimension, and this life we live in. So I strongly also urge you to don't pay attention to chat. Don't pay attention to anyone in the public when this story gets out or whoever you, and just know that I myself, and I'm even speaking from my brother, but I myself am listening to you, and I'm going on this experience with you because literally I have a passion in this, and I know there's more that meets the eye. The thing with human mentality is we always have to put an answer to everything, and we always have to make others' belief system our own system, and quick fast to judge and tell someone you didn't do it, you didn't experience it, it didn't happen, so stop with it. I'm not that person. So I applaud you for coming on here and even be willing to speak your mind on it.
However, I'm that person, and how much, like Paul said, did you pay those whores?
Oh, lots of money. I mean, yeah, I was bankrupted for weeks. Listen, no, seriously, it doesn't matter. I didn't tell that story for any reason other than it just seemed like an appropriate thing. Yeah, we were talking about it, and there's no reason not to share it. People don't have to believe me. And by the way, people don't have to believe in a Christian God. They can believe in Allah. They can believe in Krishna, Vishnu. They can believe in Buddha. I don't care. Or they can believe in nothing at all and just live well, be good people. It's the same path. And just some of us, we each of us has our own different journey to being the best we can, and to making as much of a difference to others as we can, where we can.
Right.
My journey and my experience is mine. I don't expect anyone else to take that on, and I don't mind if people are. It doesn't bother me at all if people are skeptical about it or otherwise. I don't care.
I've always said that. Yeah. I had a near-death experience. I had a near-death experience, and I was on the other side. You know how many looks and people that just like, they still don't want to believe what I have to say. They'll listen, but when I tell them this was my reality, where I was at, I could never explain it to you. What I saw, there's no words for, but it was realer than the conversation in this plane of existence now, and I was blessed to have seen it.
Right.
And I could tell people that, and they'll look at you like you crazy, or then there's some that goes, I 100% believe you.
Right. Yeah.
However it goes, it's just my freaking story.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, and what's really important about what you've just said and what I've just said is, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't.
Whether or not it happened or not, whether or not other people believe us, if that's what we feel, and we've been blessed with these experiences, even if they're wrong, even if it turns out there is no God, it doesn't matter, because I feel blessed by it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Mm-hmm. I feel blessed by it regardless. I don't care. It doesn't matter.
And that's
what
all
the outcome
that matters.
Is.
Yeah.
All that matters is I feel blessed by it, and it's been a spur to me thinking more deeply about other people, my connection, and just that it feels to me. I'll tell you what it feels like. It feels like we're not alone. That's what it feels like.
Exactly.
We're not alone. That's it.
Okay,
Yep.
here's another question for you.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to get through these quickly. Have you ever heard of a Dr. Duncan McDougall?
Oh, Dr. Duncan McDougall of the Clan McDougall. No,
Okay.
never heard of him.
I love that.
Duncan McDougall.
McDougall.
Dr.
McDougall of the Clan McDougall.
McDougall.
So back in 1907,
Yeah.
you ready? Okay. Back in 1907, you fucking ass clowns. There was a doctor. His name was Dr. McDougall. He attempted to measure the weight of the human soul. And every time he did this experiment, the same number kept coming back. After accounting for everything at the time of death, even where these person or persons have died, this man was so meticulous at the exact time of death, and he's run numerous of experiments, which they now say is pseudoscience. 21 grams had appeared to be missing from the human body at the time of death. And he was a man of conviction. He experimented this with many patients that were hours away from death, who have been weighed vigorously.
They actually stayed on the weighing scale.
They stayed on the weighing scale. And every time, no matter how large the human being was, no matter how small the human being was, exactly 21 grams were missing. And they tried to bury this man in his knowledge and tell people you're being hoaxed. And he tried to bring it to light. What's your thought process on this? Do you think the human soul can be weighed? Do we have a soul, or is it just meat bags and a small amount of brain matter and some electrons firing off, and once it's done, it's done? Is there more to us than us?
So, as a scientist, I can say that I've just had a very quick look at the experiment, Dr. Duncan McDougall, and I'm not sure it's entirely credible. However, that doesn't mean that the idea that we have a soul is incredible. In fact, I believe that we do. I believe there are too many. There's a number of things that have happened, one of which is the discovery that the structure of the brain, it is believed, I believe, and I might have this wrong, and I'm going to have to look this up again now, because I've looked this up several times and I need to check the latest thinking. But the structure of the brain is such that at a certain point, electrical signals disappear down and into essentially a quantum state, and they disappear. And you can't measure what's there, and then at some point on recall it reappears and ends up creating an electrical thing, right? So I believe that's something which has been demonstrated, and beyond that, I feel there is a great connectedness between all living things, and the soul is just another word for our spirit, or our essence, as it were. I do believe it goes on. I do believe it endures, and whether or not it becomes part of a greater whole, a universal soul, as it were, or a universal thing, something, I'm not at all surprised it's not able to contact us back here on this plane, if that were the case. But these are my beliefs.
Right.
There's no proof for any of this. I happen to believe we have souls. I'm not sure I believe in the classic heaven and hell thing.
Right.
That's it's a bit like the believing in the virgin birth and believing in there's a lot of stuff in the Bible which we know historically was created to it was written to give the church power. If you read through the history books and if you look at the primary sources, you can see where different versions of biblical texts have been either altered or amended or added to or discarded because they don't fit, and those things do exist. We know that. That's not a conspiracy thing. That's just
right. Hence the King James version of the Bible.
Yeah, the King James thing. Which if you read the if instead you read the what's the English guy? I've got it here somewhere. Here we go. Hang on, 1 second. The William Tyndale version of the Bible.
Oh, wow.
Which goes back to the original Greek. And when you read his translation, you go, really? It's not at all like the King James, but it is a more accurate version of the Bible. Now that's not interesting, from a religious point of view. I believe what I believe anyway. But what that tells me is that religious texts are not to be entirely relied upon. Anything. They're just not. They're just not. It's kind of what. So in Leviticus, if I wear glasses and go into church, I should have my eyes put out, should I? Really? Is that the case? We should stone a woman or someone for wearing two different sorts of cloth at the same time. We should stone them to death.
Yeah.
What? That's all. Don't believe everything. And so, yeah, I believe personally, I believe in the soul because I think it makes sense.
Yeah. Well, the book you said something fascinating. Read the Book of Enoch.
The Book of Magdalene, the Book of Thomas is a very interesting book. In fact, there is another book which is really worthwhile reading if you're of a literary persuasion and or someone that likes language and or translations and that kind of thing. There's a guy called Stant Litore, S-T-A-N-T Litore, L-I-T-O-R-E. He has he's a writer who's struggling at the moment, and he's looking after a daughter who's got really big problems. But he's also a translator, and he's deeply Christian, but he's not deeply Christian in any of the churches that we recognise. He is someone who's gone back to the original Greek texts and has done a whole examination. And I think his book's called Lives of Unforgetting. I think that's what it's called. And it's about how the church has changed the original Greek texts and misinterpreted either deliberately or otherwise. Mostly otherwise, they didn't mean to. So that the Bible has a huge number of really big errors all the way through it about the place of women, homosexuality, just mispronunciations or mistranslations that change absolutely what the Bible means. And that's interesting because aside from whether or not you're religious, it just says that there's a whole, the whole of the last 2,000 years, or certainly the last 1,500 years since around about 400 Justinian times, has been based on what we know is an absolute lie.
Yeah.
So, but that doesn't, and even that doesn't stop me feeling, having my own religious beliefs. But it's not the church's.
Right.
So
you got to
read, research.
With having your faith. Are you going to read a question or something?
No, go ahead.
With having your faith in mind and all that, and I respect everything that you have said. Now I have to ask, and it's the old goddamn monkey way about us. Spaceship comes down from space, and lo and behold, they are extraterrestrial race. They've been around longer than us. They may even have had a partake in our existence. They come out of wherever they come from, and they just acknowledge their presence. How does that shake Andrew's paradigm?
Doesn't shake my paradigm, it reinforces it. And I think the whole thing with aliens is there is definitely alien life out there. There is absolutely no possibility there isn't. It's whether or not it's been alive in the same time frame as us, whether or not it's able to reach out and communicate. If they're able to fly the distances to get here, then they're likely going to be way more civilized, have a much more advanced technologies than we, and or maybe a completely different moral system. I'd be very if I knew an alien race was coming, I'd be extraordinarily nervous, because I don't think we're doing a great job. And what might they make of us? But yeah, do I believe in aliens? Yes, because science tells us there's no possible way there can't be.
Right.
That we're the only ones here. But the time span in which those could have developed means we could have missed each other by, look how long it's taken for the human, we're 200,000 years old, the human species. As we would recognize humans, maybe 50,000, but 200,000 covers it. And we've gone in the last 100 years from not flying, or in fact 110 years from not having cars or any of that stuff, to suddenly having cars, aeroplanes, flying to the moon, having hypersonic whatevers, quantum computing, mobile, all the stuff we do. And we've done, in the last 25 years, what's happened with the internet is extraordinary. Look at how fast the pace of development has been. And that's in 200,000 years. This has happened in the last 100 or so. How much more advanced will have someone be that gets here?
Yeah, quickly. Like it seemed like we came up with the electricity and then the Model T, and it just took off from there.
Yeah, real quick. So if we've made those advances, what's another civilization going to have done?
Right. And there's another question that's being posed out there for everyone's models on whatever belief you believe in, whether you're an atheist, whether you believe in a God, whether you believe in hell, or whatever your belief is. There's a modeled question out there that a lot of scientists and religious figures are pondering is, can something come from nothing? And it's been a question that is being...
Define nothing.
Exactly. And that's exactly why they brought it up, because your consciousness is coming from somewhere. To have an origin point, and I think Wagyu was hitting on this with Manny just now about the simulation. Creators of creators. We can't.
What's the question?
The question is, if we're here, then where did we come from? Nothing is not an answer.
Okay. The big questions.
Yes.
So nothing is a very difficult thing to envisage, and it's very difficult to envisage that there ever is or was nothing.
Because it's going into man-made etymology.
No. Going, just talking about physics, pure physics, quantum physics.
Okay.
Quantum. If you look, there is a constant foam of quantum activity. There's a constant state of flux of quantum. Quantum particles appear and disappear in our universe all the time. They appear and disappear. Where do they come from? Now, we know from Einstein that E equals mc squared. Matter, energy equals matter times by light squared, the speed of light squared. So we know that energy and matter are equivalencies. We know that time is something that we can only navigate one way.
Okay.
But at a quantum level, if quantum particles are appearing and then disappearing, where are they going to? To nothing. And that's why people came up with the whole idea of the multiverse and parallel universes. And I'm still thinking this one through, and I have lots of very deep conversations about this. But I believe there are other. If you think about phases, if you take two microphones and you've got them up on a drum kit and you put one in phase and one out of phase, you know that one of them is going up and one of them is going down at the same time. You put those at the top and they cancel, which is why you end up with no bass end, right? I think the same thing's going on a quantum level. There's a theory called brain theory, which describes the universe as sheets, if you will. Thinner than the thinnest particle you can imagine, but it kind of moves around like sheets, and we're on one sheet, and directly below us is another.
Right.
And there are all sorts of ways of explaining this. We don't know for certain exactly what they are, but there is nothing that is nothing. We don't come from nothing. Energy is happening somewhere, and I think probably the idea of dark matter and dark energy is talking about phase shifts so that the energy is phased out of our particular universe at this particular time, or our phase, as it were, and moving on to another, and we're sharing with that, so it's occupying a lot of spaces for a lot of universes. But I can't prove that. It's just a really interesting thing, and it means that there is nothing from nothing, because it's not nothing. There's always.
I really like what Andrew, or I really like what Uncle Jerry just said,
and Wookie.
Okay, Uncle Jerry, the fact that we pondered this and more is a sign we are developing to a higher state, and we will in time. I get what he's saying there.
And to pair with that, Wookie is on the same thing. The minute you call it nothing, you have defined it, therefore it is now something, i.e. it is no longer nothing. And that just comes back. So I had a question. If we are in our space and time in our universe, and we know that black holes exist, and I like to say Michio Kaku coined this too. We're on like this fabric, this piece of paper. And if I were to, if a black hole formed in my universe and it made this whirlpool and it's sucking in matter, where does that matter go? Does it tether down and drain into the next universe and feeds that? So that's just one of the things where I would like to know if you have touched anything on that, Andrew.
For some reason my signal, my connection dropped out there for a sec. Just, you have to rewind about 15 seconds on that, Lamar.
Black holes in our universe. Yep. Do you think, because we're on a sheet of paper like Michio Kaku explained, do you think black holes ripple down in the proverbial garbage disposal into another plane of existence as it pulls in matter and light?
Is it ripping through those fabrics you were just explaining that are parallel to each other?
I explained a theory that there are parallel universes. It's a theory. It's one which explains a lot. I don't know is the answer. Black holes are still a puzzle. Black holes are still a puzzle. We think we know they exist. We can certainly observe characteristics which describe what was predicted by Einstein. But how they actually act and how they react is another matter altogether. There's a point within a black hole where Einsteinian physics fails. That's where quantum physics comes in, and even that has some problems around a black hole. So there's a lot there that gives room for pretty much anything to be possible. Black holes do exist. I like to think, because it makes sense to me, that there are multiple universes or multiple brains, as it were, out there. And they may have completely different life forms in them. They may have exactly the same. I don't know. I don't know. I simply don't know. But they're there.
Yeah.
And if they're there and we don't understand something so fundamental about them, the fact that we can't find however many percent, 75% or I can't quite remember, of dark energy and dark matter. Go away, you naughty bugger. If we can't find that, where is it? But we know something's there doing something. So these are all questions which are really good philosophically. Great to explore.
Right.
But anyone that says they know is talking horseshit. Yeah, they really are.
Yeah, they're foolish.
Except a very few really clever, scientists and physicists that really do have a better handle on this, and I certainly wouldn't class myself as being one of those.
Well, that leads me to another deep question. You could look at the ocean and say fish swim in it. They don't. I truly think they don't realize it or call it water. They just call it a part of their environment. I would say the same for black matter. Planets seem to gravitate, float on black matter. Black matter obviously has a substance to
black
it.
Matter? Dark matter?
I'm sorry, dark matter. Dark matter obviously has some sort of substance, some sort of buoyancy about it. Or is it all just a vacuum that smells like burnt meat?
I don't think. Well, certainly there is. There's not a complete vacuum anywhere in the universe. There are always trace hydrogen and helium atoms bouncing around, and there is certainly lots of quantum flux going on, and there's a lot of background radiation, so things are bouncing around. We know the background microwave radiation is a thing and it exists, so we can see and know there was a Big Bang, and once we knew that, we could follow that back and see the point of origin of the Big Bang. So we know the Big Bang happened. What's going to happen next? There is still, even now, some debate. We think we're now in an expanding universe. What does that mean? We think that possibly there's a mirror version of this at the other side of the Big Bang that's going the other way. That's another theory. It's a theory. I can't tell you, but it's the fact that we're able to have these discussions. Think back when the 1600s, when people were starting to read the Bible for the first time, right? Just 400 years ago. They couldn't have even conceived of having these conversations.
Right.
And yet here we are.
They almost tried
or it would be heresy. It would be heresy.
They almost tried to get rid of Galileo, who just tried a simple notion like, hey, I think the Earth is revolving around the sun.
Heresy.
But that's that happens every generation or so. That's what's happening in the States at the moment with certain sectors who are saying, if you believe this, then that's not right, and putting the most ridiculous stuff out there. And it's happening here as well, and it's happening all over the world. People are quoting opinions as facts.
Right.
I'm only interested in facts as facts.
Right.
I'm only interested in facts.
Yeah.
But people are quoting this, and people are believing those opinions as facts. That's a problem for us, man.
Yeah.
That's a big problem.
Okay, we have 20 minutes, so let me ask this pretty much the last question. And
it wasn't me. I never done it.
Get Jervis comes on in 20 minutes. What's your outlook for our society, and what kind of legacy do you want to leave behind for your family? You can answer them in any order. I don't care.
No, the outlook for our society at the moment is looking pretty bleak, but we may make it through, is the best I can say. We may make it through this phase. We've certainly got the ability, I believe the human race has the ability to work through the climate change. Climate change is happening. Anyone that says it's not is mad. Climate change is happening, and that it's man-made is undeniable. The science is completely undeniable in that. We have the opportunity still to mitigate the worst effects of this. We even have the technologies, were we to be so minded, to be able to reverse a lot of this, or at least to adapt to it. So, we're an incredibly inventive, brilliant species. So I got to have hope for our species. I think we're going to go through a tough time over the next few years. Couple of decades are going to be tough, but who knows? The one thing I do know is reading history. It's taught me that life is circular. These things are circular. Repeat. It's happened before. It's going to happen again. So I have hope that those who are the most destructive forces generally end up not succeeding. So, maybe we can take some comfort from that. I'm not sure we're all going to make it through that, but we'll see.
At some point, though, you don't even need science to tell you that we're polluting the earth. I can go out right now, go to a beach and see microplastics, trash in the fucking ocean. I can see smog in the air. I can see the overabundance of resources being wasted. If you're looking, you can find it. You don't really need science to
look
see.
At what happened in lockdown. Look at what happened in lockdown. Birds returned. We heard bird song. The atmosphere cleared up massively. There were no vapor trails for a period of time. A couple of months, 2, 3, 4, 5 months, whatever it was. It's like the Earth took a huge breath, and we went, "Wow, this is amazing," and then we went straight back on it again. So. We know it can be done, but it's just not. You also asked about what would I like my legacy for my family to be. There's two legacies I want. One is for the world, at large. What I can leave, what difference can I make for the world? And one is for my family. My legacy, my legacy is that I've loved them and done the best I can for them, and that they can, if I'm going to go before them, before my wife, and I hope she understands that I'm not going anywhere. You know, I'm still going to be there looking down, and that you know, life still has to carry on for her, and she should do it with all the joy that I have for life. And you know, for the wider world, my legacy, that's something I'm working on. I want to start rebuilding communities. I think communities are the heart and soul of what we're missing at the moment. So I'm doing everything I can to build communities, real ones, proper communities where people meet and talk, and providing the facilities for people with my studios to make it an accessible, affordable space for anyone that wants to get into the creative arts and have access to the kind of equipment we have. I want them to be able to have that regardless. I don't want it to just be, you know, I've done the commercial thing. I want other people who otherwise couldn't afford to, young people, women, people from backgrounds where they're socioeconomically deprived, immigrants. I don't care. I just want anyone that wants the opportunity to try this stuff out to have the ability to do so. That's what I want to do.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're doing that, Andrew. I really am.
Yeah.
It's, you know, it's important, and I hope that my legacy is that I was a real arse when I was young. I knew I could manipulate people, and I knew I was very charming, and I took advantage of that when I was younger because I didn't know any better as a twat.
Right.
But as I've got older, I've realised that there are consequences for this, and that it's better to try and do good, be good, do good by example. And I hope that my turning my life around and the things I do and the way I live my life, I hope that inspires other people to think about what they do and inspires them to do the same, because that's where our hope lies.
Yeah.
Well said. Sir.
Is there anything you're still trying to chase with this life that you have left? Is there something else that needs to be had?
God, so many. Part of getting older is recognizing that you suddenly start running up against some limits. You have a limit of time, energy, physical ability, not brain power in my case in this time, because I've always been stupid, but the opportunity to really get back and do some of the stuff I love, making music, and I'll only get to do some of those, so I want to make what I do count. But I think there are so many people that are having a tough time at the moment. I can't think that I have any more right to have more of the lovely stuff than anyone else. So I'm just going to be really doing as much as I can to help others. And hopefully that will include some of this as well.
Man, that's beautiful, Andrew.
Yeah.
Like, you've come to the right channel. That's what we're all about. We're not about tearing people down, but we're all about building people up, and it's our goal to keep people out of their comfort zone and get into some form of discomfort. This life is very short. Put yourself somewhere you really wouldn't put yourself. Get a taste of it.
Welcome change. It's tough. Change
Right.
is difficult. Start learning to welcome it and see the opportunities it provides, rather than just the downside. Change is inevitable.
Right.
It just is.
Yeah.
Change is inevitable. So embrace it. Embrace it.
Yeah, and I'm starting to open my mind up to a bunch of different concepts and models and different nature of people and what they're going through, and ultimately, I'm starting to realize I don't really have a problem with anyone, even if someone else looks at him and go, well, he's batshit crazy. What's crazy? What's anything with with the way we live now and all these influencers and people always trying to put their impressions on you and turn them into you, or turn you into them. This is a very, very difficult world to navigate through.
Here's a thought. Sorry, I just got to get this in. I know we're overrunning now, but here's a real quick thought for you, right? There are some people who are irredeemably twats. They're irredeemably. Right. There's no hope for them. They're going to do what they're going to do because they can't be turned around, because they're in a position of power where that is just never going to happen. And so you kind of just have to go, do it. You've got to do what you're going to do. I'm going to do what I'm going to do. Yes. You have no power, no opportunity or ability to change them. So focus your energies on those you can, on those you can make a difference to, and talking to those people. You can talk to everyone else, people who you may disagree with violently, but who are still human beings living their lives. There are points of commonality where you can find a way to cross that bridge and start having those conversations. Do it.
Yeah.
By the way,
go ahead.
Everything I've said so far in these last 3 hours, I've been lying. I'm actually an evil tyrant.
I knew you were.
Yeah,
I knew you were
that.
an evil crest head.
I was
what
wondering,
you were.
wondering were you going to break?
Yeah. Thank you, Andrew. I think what everybody can get away from this whole conversation is the hardest thing to be on this planet
is yourself,
and that's the bottom line.
By the way, Robbie and Ken are both they're awful people, but I actually adore them. I am blessed.
They live in their own world.
Yeah, they're horrible and they smell, but I adore them. And they're genuinely brilliant people.
Yeah, they definitely are.
Apart from Robbie and Ken, they're awful.
Laurel and Hardy in its finest.
Yeah.
It was a great conversation. I do love conversations like these. We're one conversation away from understanding everyone, and that's what this podcast is built on. Music.
It's been great, guys.
Yeah. We can't say enough about you coming on and actually having this conversation and giving the world a piece of who Andrew is. And
you poor buggers.
Oh shit. You'll forever be a time capsule in this podcast, and it'll be viewed throughout the centuries.
104 million times it will be, Andrew.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, there you go. It happens.
And we shall have a part 2. We'll never not speak about things again. I find it very fascinating to speak with you. You're a very smart man. You articulate things very well, and I'm able to get into your imagination. You're much like Synchrotron when he was on here. And when Andy was on here, you could really feel he really wanted to say more, but he was holding himself back based on what others think. So I really want to get Andy back on here soon, because he was starting to go off on different outliers, and he kept telling himself, nope, I shouldn't go there. And we were like, yeah, Andy, let's go there. And Andrew, you had no borders, and it was fun. I like how you just go along with this, and it's great to know who you are as a person. And for anyone who wants to join the interview, please sign up. Let's have a conversation. You're a part of this community.
And let us get to know you.
You matter. Let us see your face. And
there's been some great comments in the chats.
Right.
This is our tribe, right? I talked about tribes earlier. This is our tribe, and I'm really, really proud to be a part of it.
And I love seeing everyone's demeanor and what everyone thinks, and when they put their comments in, and what it's. Everyone has their own mind, and they view this world different, and that's what makes this so beautiful. So thank you all for showing up. Monday, it is back to business. Scott Sounds and Cresthead are our 2 lead producers and IT support. They're helping us create this album. I know Andrew Longhurst, you have signed up to be a featuring guest star. James Dyson has signed up.
Guest star.
You're a star to us. So anyone else who wants to be a featuring guest on the album, we're doing this album completely on the infowebs. We're doing it live. We're recording it live. You're going to see every ounce of it. Per Wagyu, we should not waste anything. It's all going to be live. So anyone wanting to join that, please do. Check in with our Discord. I don't know if we have the email up, but maybe the wife can do that. She's not here. She's watching the grandbaby. But if you want to hop in the Discord, jump in. We got plenty of good folks in there that can help you with just about anything you can think of. It's like
listen, and I meant to make one shout out, if I may. Oh God, Synth Samurai. I know that you've been supporting some of the guys in this channel and elsewhere, and I've got to take my hat off to you, sir, for doing what you do. We don't, none of us have to agree about all sorts of things. It doesn't matter, but I take my hat off to you for the support you give to people, and thank you for being a real stand-up guy.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
I concur with that.
Yeah.
We all try our best, and we all do a damn good job at being us and helping others.
Yeah.
And none of us gets it right, but hey, we're trying. Trying
keep
is better
doing it.
than not trying, so
Own up to your mistakes. They're good fun. It's good fun to own up to shit.
Right.
It really is. It's just kind of, I did that.
Yeah. I actually like watching Synth Samurai content. He's a guy who lives in his imagination, much like my brother and I. And things can get misconstrued without context. And once you get to know people, you realize they're much like you. We all have our flaws in certain areas, but hey, none of us is perfect, and we just got to learn to love each other and deal with the life polarities, and let the bullshit go. Let it ride, as they say.
Yeah.
And
don't take politics. Don't get into the politicking. If people are talking about you behind your back, if people talks to you about someone else, my way of dealing with that is just say, look, if you want to talk about someone else, that's great, but I'm going to tell them what you're saying. I'm just going to openly say, they've said this, is that right? And if you're not comfortable with that, don't be telling me that shit. That's it. It's really that simple.
Bottom line. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's do our best to respect one another. We have 1 minute left to get Jervis. Anything you want to say real quick to the people? Andrew, now's the time.
Yeah, Jervis, what an awful person he is.
That guy.
He's terrible. Listen, you've got to go and see his show to see just how awful he is. And his cat, oh man, no, don't go there, man. Just
save
go and
yourself
see
the
how awful
embarrassment.
he is.
Yeah. Jervis is the twats of twats.
Yes,
He is.
Yeah. You can catch
But I
Andrew,
love him.
You can catch Andrew Longhurst on PSN on Fridays at 2:00.
And you might even see him on the pub at whenever the Kent does the pub.
Yeah.
Or you
I'll
might
be
see
there
him
from time to time.
Or you might see him here late night jamming with us. Yeah, I mean, who knows when you're going to see a Longhurst? But when you do, ladies and gentlemen,
You better be paying attention. Because he does shit that.
Because he does shit like that.
All right, everybody. We appreciate you. Thanks for showing up.
Thank you, Andrew.
We'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for your time.
Yep.
All right, we'll give you a little time for the chat to check out and say bye to each other.